American Comics. Favorability System. Spider-Gwen is my first girlfriend. Chapter 41. The moment his fingertips touched the thick fog, Lin Hall found that the thick fog in front of him had solidified and turned into a barrier similar to glass. And the moment Lin touched it, those blood-red eyes suddenly came up. Seeing this, Sean and Alice immediately prepared to shoot, but Lin raised his hand to stop them. Sure enough, those strange eyes did not move after touching the barrier formed by the thick fog. Seeing this scene, Lin nodded gently, and it was exactly as he guessed. The reason why the county police officer was not attacked last night was that the owner of the eyes was blocked by the barrier. However, it is still unknown how all this was formed. Moreover, is this thick fog barrier to prevent people like them from entering or preventing them from coming out? Holding a weapon and coming to Lin, Alice looked at the countless eyes and then reached out to touch the barrier. Oops. The moment she touched the barrier, she retracted her hand and looked at Lin and said, "Boss, the mist has become solid and has electricity, why didn't you tell me?" Electricity. Lin frowned when she heard Alice say that. When she touched it just now, she didn't feel any electric shock. She stretched out her hand again to try, but still didn't feel any electric shock. Sean, who was standing next to her, also stretched out his hand to try, but also didn't feel any electric shock. Looking at the expressions of the two, Alice was a little confused. She stretched out her hand to continue to try, but another electric current bounced her away. Seeing this scene, Lin waved behind him, and soon other men rushed over. According to Lin's instructions, the others tried one by one. Except for a few women in the information department, other male agents did not feel any electric shock. This thing solidified by thick fog is actually gender discriminatory. Stretching out her hand and raising a middle finger to the fog barrier, Alice turned back to the camp in a huff. "Sean, let everyone take turns to be on duty tonight, load their weapons, and enter this town to find out the situation after dawn." Yes. Hearing Lin's order, Sean immediately went to assign tasks. Back in the car, Lin put down the seat, thinking about whether those weird eyes were residents of the town, and closed his eyes to rest. No matter what happened to this town, Lin has already thought of the truth to clarify. It must be a virus deliberately spread by the Russians. This has become a routine for the official announcement of the truth that cannot explain the disaster. After a night's rest, as the sky gradually brightened, the barrier condensed by the thick fog turned into fog again. The stalled car can be restarted, and even the blocked signal has returned to normal. Because of the electric current, last night, Lin asked Alice to stay with the female members, while he took Sean and others into the town. A dozen fully armed FBI members just entered the town and saw the natives wandering unconsciously on the street. When they saw Lin leading the team in, they immediately rushed over. Seeing this, Lin directly ordered to open fire. Bursts of gunfire rang in the town, but the natives were still charging towards this side after being pierced by bullets. Even if their heads were shattered by bullets, they still came towards everyone. Seeing this scene, Lin Hall grabbed a guy who was rushing over and threw him out. The native who was thrown out by Lin hit the wall next to him, and both legs were broken, but he still crawled towards Lin. "Boss, what the hell have the residents of this town become?" Seeing the head explode like a watermelon, but the headless body rushed towards the monster on his side as if it was equipped with navigation. Sean cursed in a low voice while firing. "Sean, lead the team to evacuate the thick fog. No one is allowed to come in before I come out." As he spoke, Lin Hall jumped onto the roof in 3 or 2 steps. "Boss, let me do it. You lead the team to evacuate." Pointing the submachine gun at the ground, Sean was just about to climb up and replace Lin. But Lin glared at him and said, "Follow the order." Yes. Looking at Lin hesitantly, Sean held the submachine gun and gritted his teeth. Then he angrily gave these aborigines who could not be killed anyway a burst of bullets. Then he reluctantly led the team to evacuate the town. As Sean and others left the town, the aborigines who had rushed towards them also stopped. Then he started to wander around the streets again without realizing it. Outside the town, seeing Sean and the others retreat, but Lin Hall did not follow. Alice immediately stepped forward and asked, "Where's the boss? You left the boss alone in the town." Alice grabbed the submachine gun and was about to rush in to save Lin, but was stopped by Sean. "The boss said that no one is allowed to enter the town before he comes out." "What if the boss is in danger inside?" "This is the boss's order." "Bullshit order. Pushing Sean away, she was ready to rush in, but the next second Sean stood in front of Alice again. You know the boss's character and ability. He never fights unprepared battles. Since the boss has given this order, there must be a reason for the boss. So without the boss's order, even if the director comes, you are not allowed to go in. You. Staring at Sean, Alice kicked him hard. If the boss dies in there, I will personally send you down to accompany the boss. You don't need to do it. Seeing that Alice was no longer impulsive, Sean walked aside and lit a cigarette and said, if those immortal things really hurt the boss, I will tie a bomb and blow them up to the sky. Seeing that the atmosphere at the scene was a bit depressing, Dennis, who was originally ready to speak, quietly closed his mouth. This was the first time he saw Alice and Sean quarreling. After joining the New York FBI, he knew very well that these two people were the boss's most trusted subordinates. In the town, standing on the roof, Lynn Hall couldn't help frowning as he looked at the houses in the town. The walls of the first few houses he saw were all painted with a strange blood-red pattern. This pattern was a six-pointed star wrapped in a circle, and if you look closely, each corner of the six-pointed star was painted with something like a goat's horn. Jumping from roof to roof, Lynn found that the walls of all the houses in the town were painted with the same strange pattern. This discovery made Lynn frown, because he always felt that he seemed to have seen this strange blood-red pattern somewhere, but he couldn't remember it at all. After memorizing the patterns on these houses, Lynn Hall checked the town again. The town in the thick fog was deserted. Without outsiders entering the town, the natives in the town were still wandering unconsciously on the streets. After making sure that there was nothing to find, he prepared to leave. But as soon as he turned around, he suddenly felt a piercing chill behind him. Without thinking too much, Lynn did not hesitate to flip to another roof, aimed the submachine gun in his hand at the attacker by feeling, and then pulled the trigger. Da da da. The expected sound of the bullet passing through the attacker's body did not appear, but a series of ding-dong sounds were heard. After stabilizing his body, Lynn Hall discovered that the one who attacked him was actually a strange stone man. This strange stone man was 2 meters tall and his whole body was blood red. And the body had completely turned into a stone structure, and even the bullets attacking its body did not cause any damage. Ha ha ha. Countless bullets hit its body, but the stone man did not retreat a single step. The dark red bloodthirsty eyes stared at Lynn, and the mouth that was chewing the meat that was hard to tell whether it was human or animal minced meat kept making extremely harsh, ha-ha, sounds. Seeing that the submachine gun could not cause any harm to the stone man, Lynn Hall threw the gun to the ground. A thumb-sized white ball appeared in his hand at some point, and when the stone man pounced on him, Lynn Hall dodged the huge fist sideways, and at the same time grabbed the stone man's thick waist and flashed behind it. He hugged the stone man's waist with both hands and threw him heavily from the roof to the ground. Then Lynn jumped down and stepped heavily on the stone man with both feet. Although the physical strength of this stone man is at the bug level, when it comes to close combat, it is like a moving sandbag in front of Lynn. With Lynn stepping on his chest, the stone man kept struggling to get up, but with Lynn's super strength, the stone man couldn't get up no matter how hard he struggled. Seeing the stone man open his mouth and make a creepy sound, Lynn Hall stuffed the white ball into its mouth without hesitation. In a flash, Lynn Hall had retreated 10 meters away, watching the stone man trying to get up from the ground. Lynn Hall immediately pressed the button on the controller in his hand. Boom! A violent explosion sounded in the stone man's mouth, and the next second the explosion energy emitted a burst of fire that directly blew the stone man's head to pieces. This white ball-like thing is a special micro-bomb made by the FBI. Although the device is not big, its power can easily blow up a house. Seeing that the stone man with a shattered head was no longer moving, Lynn Hall stepped forward. After confirming that it had no signs of life, Lynn Hall checked its body. In order to prevent others from knowing his cards, Lynn Hall did not formally test his strength limit. But the nearly 2-ton car in the parking lot was lifted by Lynn without any effort. This means that his strength limit is at least 15T to 25T. He carefully examined the body, especially the cervical vertebrae that were blown to pieces. Lynn found that even the structure of this guy's body was made of special stones. And he checked the body of this guy himself and found that it also had the strange 6-pointed star pattern of the horn of the goat on its body. After seeing this pattern, Lynn Hall thought for a moment, then flashed to the side and grabbed a resident who was wandering unconsciously to check. However, this guy did not have this pattern on his body. Throwing away the resident who was baring his teeth and claws at him, Lin Hall picked up the submachine gun he had thrown away and walked out of the town. Just after coming out of the thick fog, he saw that the atmosphere in the camp was solemn. Not only that, a bunch of reporters carrying cameras and microphones came to the outside of the camp at some point. If it weren't for the surrounding county police maintaining order and isolating them outside, Lin En even thought that these guys would rush directly into the thick fog. "Boss, you finally came out." The moment they saw Lin En appear, Sean and Alice immediately rushed forward. Looking up and down at Lin En to see if he was injured, she heard Lin En say, "I'm fine." "What's the matter with these reporters?" Faced with Lin En's question, Alice said, "Boss, hasn't the online video about this town been played over 1,000,000 times? But at first, this didn't attract the attention of these reporters. But from the time we took over here to now, in less than 24 hours, the number of views has exceeded 20 million. Then these reporters came here like sharks smelling blood." Hearing Alice's explanation, Lin En frowned and said, "From yesterday afternoon to this morning, the number of online views suddenly increased so much. Who is the driving force behind it?" "The Rising Tide organization." Spreading her hands to Lin En, Alice said, "I have confirmed with the people in the information department that the driving force behind the sharp increase in video views is the Rising Tide organization. And at the beginning, the county police took videos and pictures just to report to their superiors, but no one knew how the video was leaked to the internet. I guess it's very likely that the Rising Tide organization also hacked into the Oswego Police Department, and then..." Hearing Alice's explanation, Lin Hall nodded. "Expel these reporters and tell them that the FBI will hold a press conference as soon as possible to announce the results of the investigation into this incident." "I understand, but boss, with the sharp increase in online video views and discussions, I'm worried." "Don't worry, there will be another incident that will soon attract the attention of the media and the public." As he said, Lin walked aside, took out his mobile phone and dialed. Malibu Beach, Tony Stark's villa. "Sir, Mr. Lin Hall is calling." Tony Stark, who was admiring the painted armor, answered the phone after hearing Jarvis' reminder. "Hi Lin, what do you want to talk to me about?" "Let me guess, calling me during work hours, does that mean you have found a result for the investigation you asked me to do?" Hearing Tony Stark's words, Lin Hall smiled and said, "There is no result yet, but I think the answer will be revealed soon. But before that, I need your help with something." Hearing Lin actively asking him for help, Tony Stark put down the tools in his hand and said, "No problem, what do you need me to do?" "The calm sky above Manhattan." "Oh my god, what is that?" "Oh my god, this looks like a scene from a science fiction movie." "God, this is so cool." As the street screamed, everyone subconsciously looked up at the sky. A set of extremely cool golden and red armor kept flying in the air. Every time it flew over a place, there would be endless exclamations and photos on the ground. Inside the armor, listening to the shocked expressions of the crowd below, Tony Stark said with great pleasure, "Jarvis, this is the reaction of ordinary people when they see the Mark armor for the first time. People like Lin En who asked me if I could turn it into a bracelet when they saw the armor for the first time are the exception. Continue to increase the flight power. Although I am very low-key, since I promised Lin En, I think I should do my best." Facing Tony Stark's modesty, Jarvis teased, "Sir, you are indeed a very low-key person, and you don't enjoy the attention of the public at all. Jarvis, after this upgrade, you have definitely learned bad things." As he said, Tony Stark controlled the flight of the armor and said, "Jarvis, find out if there are any reporters, let's make a stunning appearance." "Sir, there is a New York Times reporter buying hot dogs at the stall 3 blocks away, and she is followed by a photographer carrying a camera. In that case, what are you waiting for?" After speaking, Tony Stark flew directly to the direction of 3 blocks away. After buying a hot dog from the stall, the female reporter complained to the cameraman while eating, "These stingy grandits should be hung on the street lights. If we don't pay enough for the informant, where can we find news that is eye-catching enough? Will explosive news fall from the sky? I am a graduate of journalism from a prestigious university, but I have to go to the streets to find news." While eating a hot dog and complaining, the female reporter did not hear the usual pursuer echoing her, so she subconsciously turned to him. When she saw her pursuer, she stared at the sky with wide eyes as if she had seen a ghost. The female reporter frowned and said, "What are you looking at?" As she said that, the female reporter also looked up at the sky. When she saw the cool armor in the sky, her eyes widened. Especially when she saw that it actually fell directly in front of the hot dog stall. The hot dog in the female reporter's hand fell to the ground. "Please give me a hot dog." Landing in front of the stall, Tony Stark pretended not to see the female reporter over there. After she ran over excitedly with the microphone, Tony Stark opened his visor and said, "Wow, beauty, is that hot dog on the ground yours? Don't tell me I scared you. If that's the case, then I'll compensate you with a hot dog." Speaking of this, Tony Stark signaled the stall owner to give her a hot dog. When he saw the visor open, the person in the armor turned out to be Tony Stark. The female reporter didn't care about the hot dog handed over by the stall owner, but asked excitedly with the microphone, "Oh my God, Mr. Stark. I didn't expect it to be you. Is this cool mecha your latest development? This is so cool, it feels like watching a science fiction movie. Mr. Stark, is this mecha the latest weapon developed by Stark Industries? Didn't you say you want to shut it down permanently? Hey, calm down, okay." Looking at the female reporter holding the microphone and putting it to her mouth with excitement, Tony Stark spread his hands and said, "This is not a weapon, it's just a mechanical prosthesis. In addition, do you think it's cool? Of course, Mr. Stark, this is a groundbreaking product. You have a good vision. After all, only geniuses can make this. Of course, I only used 1/5 of my wisdom for this mechanical prosthesis." Faced with the praise of the female reporter, Tony Stark acted as if it was a matter of course. "I don't know where he got a $20 bill from," and handed it to the stall owner, saying, "Give this beauty another hot dog, it's my treat." After that, Tony Stark flew away in the armor. Oh my God, this is simply amazing." Waving the microphone in her hand, the female reporter looked at her companion carrying the camera and said excitedly, "Did you shoot the scene just now? Justin, let's rush back to the newspaper office immediately. Our bonus this month will definitely double." After that, the female reporter excitedly ran towards the car. 2 hours later, the edge of the town was wrapped in thick fog. "Boss, there are videos of Tony Stark flying in his armor all over the internet. Some were taken by passers-by, and some were reported by the New York Times. In just 2 hours, the number of views of the photos and videos exceeded 1 million. Tony Stark has become the focus of everyone." Hearing Alice's words, Lynn Hall said while eating lunch with a lunch box, "I expected it a long time ago. After all, compared to what happened in this town, Tony Stark in the armor that has never been released can attract more attention. By the way, is there any result for the pattern I drew?" Faced with Lynn's inquiry, Alice took the laptop and said, "We found it, boss. The people in the information department searched and compared it on the internet based on the pattern you drew. Finally, we found that it was related to the sacrificial ceremony of a tribe in Eastern Europe, and colleagues in the information department also saw records in a book published by an expert in mysticism based on clues." At this point, Alice looked at Lynn and said, "Boss, this expert in mysticism was also a professor at Yale University. You have also attended his class." "Really?" Hearing Alice say this, Lynn Hall put down the lunchbox in his hand and took the notebook to read it. When Lynn Hall saw the professor on the computer, he remembered. Not only had he attended his class, he had even read the book on mysticism he wrote in his spare time. The book wrote about mysterious rituals around the world, and even listed legendary characters such as demons and angels. Among them, there is the pattern in the town. No wonder I felt a little familiar when I saw the weird pattern for the first time, but I couldn't remember it. But that pattern is used for sacrifice." After switching to the part about the mysterious pattern, Lin En frowned after taking a look. Sacrificing life, selling souls to the devils in hell to gain mysterious power. So, the residents of this town are actually the victims of the evil ritual. After calling the professor, Lin Hall looked at the detailed information of the town residents and started to think. It is now certain that what happened in this town is a supernatural event and that pattern symbolizes the evil sacrificial ritual. Sacrifice yourself or more souls to the devil, thereby gaining powerful power. As for whom the sacrifice is, and what the person who loses his soul after being sacrificed will become, the professor doesn't know. The reason why he knew this pattern was because of the legend he heard when he was traveling to Eastern Europe when he was young. Relying on the chair and pinched his eyebrows, Lin Hall recalled the strange stone man in the town during the day. Could it be that stone man is the guy who leads the sacrifice ceremony and sacrifices the souls of more than 1,300 people to the devil, thereby obtaining supernatural power? If this is true, then why does the thick fog always sank the town? Those town residents who have lost their souls are always trapped in the town and cannot get out, and the thick fog in the town becomes a barrier at night. It's impossible that the demons in hell are worried that those, walking dead, will harm other civilians. It is impossible to think about it no matter how you think about it. After all, even the FBI people don't care about the life and death of these Americans. Not to mention the so-called demons in hell. However, isn't the responsibility of the Supreme Master Gu's security in protecting the real dimension? Lin En didn't believe that the great things of more than 1,300 lives could be concealed by Ancient One. But until now, Gui and those secret magicians have not appeared. Thinking of this, after Lin Nang looked at the darkness, the thick fog that condensed into a barrier once again frowned. "Boss, have a cup of coffee." He walked over with the coffee, and Alice handed the brewed coffee to Lin. "I have written the investigation report about this incident. According to your request, the reasons are all turned to the bears. They secretly created a terrifying biochemical virus in this small town." Speaking of this, Alice smiled and said, "Boss, as long as the bear is still there, it is difficult for us to explain the published investigation results, which are much easier to deal with. So I hope the bear will become more and more stable now." Hearing Alice say this, Lin also laughed. "It's best not to let the people of the Ministry of Justice know about this, otherwise I can't help you if a spy's hat is taken off. I'm not stupid." Speaking of this, Alice leaned over to Lin and whispered, "I heard from the training department that after these days of training, Barbara is not familiar with the business in the bureau. But it should be possible to help you with some documents, so boss, are you going to eat her?" Looking at Alice's gossipy look, Lin Hall pushed her head and let her roll aside. "Tisk, it's boring, isn't that just a little bit? I can do it from the way she looks at you." He held the cup and drank coffee, and listened to Alice's words and moved halfway. Lin En raised his head and suddenly found that the time and space around him seemed to be frozen. Alice opened her mouth and did not move, and the bonfire next to her that was fluttering in the wind stopped for a moment. Even the flying insects were frozen in the air. The sudden change made Lin Hall become alert in an instant, and the gun on his body had just been pulled out. I saw a man holding a cane and unable to tell what age he was looking at him with a smile. The reason why it is impossible to tell how old he is because Lin thinks that he is 20 years old and that someone believes that he is 80. The moment he saw this mysterious man, Lin Hall pointed his gun at him. But before the trigger was pulled, the pistol suddenly turned into colorful bubbles and flew into the night sky. "Don't be impulsive, I have no malice." Looking at Lin's vigilant eyes, the man walked towards this side with a smile. "For me, this is just a very interesting challenge. I didn't intend to let anyone disturb this challenge at first, but after seeing you, I changed my mind." Watching this man walking towards him step by step, but the surrounding time and space shrink rapidly under his feet. Lin Hall dared not be careless at all. "Compared with the challenger, your soul is the strangest and most interesting one I have ever seen." Mephisto Favorability 1. Looking at the sudden prompt from the system, Lin Hall's pupils contracted slightly. The mysterious man in front of me turned out to be the Lord of Hell Mephisto. Before Lin Hall could speak, a green magic appeared around him. As the green magic formed a circular portal, a man wearing a green cloak and an armored mask on his head walked out. "Mephisto, I haven't seen each other for 3 years. Dumb, I don't know how strong you are this time. I'm looking forward to this challenge." Listening to Mephisto's tone, Victor Doom's eyes flashed with anger. Of course he understood that his 3-year challenge was the same as the animal performances of a circus for people to enjoy. This is undoubtedly a huge humiliation for Victor Doom. But even so, Victor Doom still never thought of giving up. Because this is the only way to save his mother's soul from hell. "Don't worry about the challenge, I found something more interesting." Looking at Victor Doom, whose eyes seemed to be spitting fire, Mephisto looked at Lin Hall with a smile. "Let me introduce myself. I am Mephisto, the legendary Lord of Hell. Lin Hall, your soul is the strangest of all the humans I have ever seen, so do you want to make a deal with me?" Looking at Lin, his eyes were full of temptation. "As long as you are willing to cooperate with me, you can get everything you want. For example, powerful power, money that can't be spent in a lifetime, a status that people worship, and the most beautiful woman in the world. Of course, in return, as long as you give your soul to me after you die, how about it? It's worth it to use the things after death to exchange for an unparalleled life before death. Hearing Mephisto's bewitching voice, Lynn Hall suddenly said, just like the skull with fire all over his body in California. You actually know Johnny. Looking at Lynn, Mephisto's interest in his eyes became stronger. You can also have a powerful strength like him. How about it, are you willing to make this deal with me? After the voice fell, a very ancient scroll appeared in Mephisto's hand. Come on, child, just sign your name, and everything you want will be at your fingertips. Faced with Mephisto's temptation, Lynn Hall suddenly said, more than 1,300 residents of this town will become zombies. Is this related to you? Faced with Lynn's inquiry, Mephisto laughed and said, I didn't force them. It's just that my believers gave them wealth that they couldn't refuse, and promised that they could enjoy a carefree life, so they voluntarily participated in the soul sacrifice ceremony. At this point, Mephisto waved his hand lightly. The zombie-like residents of the town appeared in front of Lynn. Look, they now have abundant wealth and no worries. Did I deceive them? Listening to the teasing in Mephisto's tone, Lynn Hall sneered, really, carefree. This is the devil's temptation. Anyone who believes in the devil's whispers will become a goat stuck in the quagmire. Victor Doom said coldly, and then green magic appeared in his palm. Stop talking nonsense, Mephisto, start the challenge. Listening to Victor Doom's cold tone, Mephisto laughed and said, you are really impatient. Your mother has lived in hell for 10 years. I think if she knew that you have to save her every 3 years. Shut up, she is not worthy of you talking about. Tisk. Looking at the green magic in Victor's palm, Mephisto shook his head. With a light wave of his hand, a large area of magma appeared around Victor Doom in the next second. A large group of horned demons rushed out from the hot magma, holding forks, chains and other weapons and rushing towards him. Almost instantly, Victor Doom fought with those magma demons. With the blessing of magic in one hand and technology in the other, Victor Doom fought hard with the group of magma demons. To be honest, I like Victor Doom very much. He challenges me every 3 years to save his witch mother who sacrificed her soul to me. Of course, this is one of my few pleasures. At this point, Mephisto looked at Lynn Hall and said, but compared to him, your soul is more precious. How about signing a soul contract with me? I promise you can get everything you want. Faced with Mephisto's whispered temptation, Lynn Hall suddenly said, unless you can give me all your power and let me take your place. At the same time, sell your soul to me, otherwise I don't want to become a walking corpse like the residents of this town. Hearing Lynn Hall's lion's mouth, Mephisto laughed. That won't do. Although your soul is very precious, I can't give you so much, otherwise I will become your toy. You see, there is no way. You want to negotiate with me, but you don't agree to the conditions I propose. Mephisto's favorability. 2. Seeing that Lynn's eyes were full of interest, Mephisto pondered for a moment and said, I want your soul more and more. So you plan to cheat me with my family? Just like Johnny Blaze. Did you guess it? Looking at Lynn Hall with appreciation, Mephisto's eyes gradually became interesting. You are much more interesting than Victor Doom and Johnny. It seems that I have to think of other ways. I hope that your soul will belong to me when we meet next time. As he said, Mephisto's figure gradually began to fade. Aren't you going to take more than 1,300 people in this town back to hell? Seeing Mephisto's figure gradually transparent, Lynn asked. Them, just a group of rotten meat without souls. After that, Mephisto's figure disappeared completely. As Mephisto disappeared, the static time and space around him was restored in an instant. So, boss, when will you let Barbara kneel down in front of you and hesitate? I still hope to see. Halfway through the flirting, Alice suddenly saw that Lynn Hall's originally indifferent expression suddenly became solemn. Seeing this scene, Alice immediately held the weapon in her hand and looked around vigilantly. At the same time, she made a tactical gesture to Sean. Once there is danger, she will shoot immediately. It's okay. With a long sigh of relief, Lynn Hall leaned back in the chair as if relieved. When Lynn Hall had just come into contact with Mephisto, he had always remained indifferent and even talked and laughed. But in fact, the pressure he brought to Lynn was very great. The feeling of being targeted by Mephisto is not so friendly. It's all because of myself or being too weak. After cursing in a low voice, a fierce look flashed in Lynn Hall's eyes. Alice, just send me the town coordinates, and get some drug dealers from various prisons in New York. After hearing Lynn's order, Alice didn't understand why the boss wanted to get a group of death row prisoners. But she still said firmly, understood. Watching Alice prepare, Lynn Hall took out his mobile phone and sent a message to Director Duke. The next morning, it was dawn. Several cars full of prisoners drove slowly over. In the major heavy prisons in the United States, the most abundant thing is drug dealers. When these people got off the car, the New York FBI also sent the equipment that Lynn wanted. After having the equipment tied to these drug dealers, Lynn Hall asked his agents to push the drug dealers into the foggy town. What are you guys going to do? Let me go, you fools. Listening to the curses of these drug dealers, they were pushed into the town at gunpoint. Lynn Hall casually threw a cigarette to Sean and said, how is the arrangement going? Don't worry, boss, the surrounding area of the town has been completely blocked, and the brothers of the information department have blocked the signal here, and even satellites can't capture the situation here. At that time, I will disguise this town as being attacked by terrorists, and there will be absolutely no wind leaking out. Listening to Sean's solemn promise, Lynn Hall nodded. Throwing the cigarette on the ground and stamping it out, Lynn Hall looked at his watch and said, in 10 minutes, I want this town to be without a single living creature that can breathe. Yes, nodding solemnly to Lynn Hall, Sean immediately led his men to carry out the mission. Not long after, a series of violent explosions sounded in the town, and the entire ground even began to tremble. Originally, Lynn wanted to use missiles to baptize the town. But when he thought about holding a press conference, it would be difficult for the director to explain to the media reporters how the Russian bear launched a missile to destroy the town, but the missile was not intercepted. Lynn Hall took this approach. After all, the Russian bear created a virus that killed more than 1,300 people, and was worried that the FBI would investigate it clearly, so it used a terrorist attack with a human bomb to eliminate the evidence. Look, this makes sense. Sure enough, he is Director Duke's most intimate henchman. As for whether the media and the public believe it, that was announced by the director. What does it have to do with me, Lynn? Federal Building. Seeing Lynn coming back with Alice, Sean and others, Miller Field, who was about to go out on a field trip, stepped forward and stopped him. What's the matter? Can we talk? Hearing Miller Field say that he wanted to talk to him, Lynn Hall suddenly smiled and said, why, the dentist case you are investigating is at a stalemate, and you want to ask me for help. As he said that, Lynn motioned Sean and Alice to leave first. Then he took a cup of coffee and came to the window and said, tell me, what do you want to talk to me about? The deputy director has been in the hospital for half a year. Everyone knows that he won't live long. Coming to the window, Miller Field looked at Lynn and said, you are now AD3, but you are not a deputy director. It seems that after Rich Hood becomes a consultant next year, you will definitely take over the position of agent director, right? Hearing what Miller said, Lynn Hall smiled and said, don't forget, Jessica, the director of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, is still watching me. So you have a chance to compete with me. Come on, Lynn, no one who can go from an ordinary agent to this step is an idiot. Laughing at himself, Miller Field took a sip of coffee and said, I want to take the position of agent supervisor. And I heard that after Rich Hood was idle next year, I even sent some messages to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Unfortunately, both the director and Rich Hood value you more, and this mission is the best example. Although I am a little unconvinced, I am not stupid. The director values you so much, so even if the Ministry of Internal Affairs keeps an eye on you, it will not have any effect. At this point, Miller stared at Lynn and said, Lynn, if I help you get rid of the other two assistant supervisors, then wait until you become the supervisor. Can I become the deputy supervisor? Listening to Miller Field's words that sounded like surrender, Lynn was not sure whether what this guy said was true or false. Opened the system to check his favorability towards himself. Found that his favorability towards himself increased from -1 to 2 points. I can't make any promises. Hearing Lynn say this, Miller Field frowned. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Lynn continue, but Miller, your level should indeed be raised. You have been D2 for almost 3 years. Oh, by the way, I heard that the guys in our bureau are restless again. Miller, when do you think these moles who are watching us in the field and the hyenas who are auditing us will stop working? Hearing Lynn Hall say this, Miller Field's eyes lit up. Yes, the moles in the bureau should indeed be rectified. They don't understand at all that when are we agents out in the field facing danger. Seeing that Miller understood what he said, his favorability increased from 2 to 4. Lynn Hall patted him on the shoulder and said, I have to report this mission to the director. The matter has been a hot topic on the internet. We must give the public a satisfactory answer. After that, Lynn Hall prepared to leave. Lynn, the other two assistant directors are not simple either. One of them has an uncle working in the Department of Justice, and the other has several members of Congress in his family. It's hard for people like us who don't have connections to get promoted. Listening to Miller Field's reminder, Lynn Hall smiled and then turned and left. Miller's meaning was very clear. Although the two guys who competed with him for the position of director had unusual backgrounds, he had a way to deal with them. It is estimated that he couldn't find any handle on himself no matter how hard he tried, and Duke's attitude towards him was determined through this mission. That's why he came to me very wisely. But even if Miller Field didn't come to me, Lynn Hall didn't care about the other two guys. After all, if you don't join the Brotherhood of Hydra, you can't be a director, and if you join the Brotherhood of Hydra, you can't be a director. Wouldn't it be a waste of time if I joined? But 2 years later, if Duke really becomes the director of the FBI and I take over the New York FBI, then each department really needs its own people. Therefore, in the past 2 years, I can use my own people to slowly infiltrate various departments. In James Duke's office, every time he comes to Duke, Lin N can get an authentic Cuban cigar. Although Lin N doesn't like this, as the director's most intimate henchman, he has to follow his steps, right? He is still waiting for him to personally win him over to join Hydra and promise him high positions and generous salaries. So at this moment, Lin N leisurely blows smoke rings, waiting for the director to read this mission report. In the mission report, Lin N recorded everything in detail except for Mephisto and Victor Doom. Of course, Lin N also thoughtfully made the evidence of the bear's crime. A moment later, putting down the mission report in his hand, James Duke looked at Lin N and said with a smile, although this incident is a supernatural event, you handled it very well. I didn't expect that the people of a whole town died because of the biological weapons of the bears. Not only that, they even used terrorist attacks such as human bombs to destroy evidence. I think that after the public learns the truth, they will definitely strongly condemn the bear. Hearing the director say this, what else can Lin Hall say except that the director is wise? He waved his hand with a smile to stop Lin's flattery. James Duke looked at Lin and said, however, did the stone man in the report really become very powerful by sacrificing other people's souls? Faced with the director's inquiry, Lin nodded and said, Director, I consulted the professor, and this is his explanation. But the professor also said that even if I don't use a bomb to kill him, he won't live long. Because demons always like to play tricks on mortals for fun, once the fun disappears, the sacrificer will also fall into hell. Hearing Lin's words, James Duke nodded. So, people, the most fearful thing is to lose themselves in pursuit of unknown power. Quote. By the way, Jessica, the head of the Internal Affairs Department, is getting engaged on the 6th of next month. Have you received the invitation? I received it, Director. Although she always dislikes me, she is a college graduate after all, and she will not lack the proper etiquette. That's good. Pointing at the cigar shavings in his hand, James Duke smiled and said, taking advantage of Jessica's engagement ceremony, the fraternity should also get together. Many members in the fraternity want to meet you, the new member. Back in his office, Lin thought about what James Duke had just said. The 6th of next month is the engagement ceremony of Senior Jessica Miles and the son of Andrew Wayne, one of the 9 justices. According to Duke, after the engagement ceremony that day, he would take me to meet all the members of the fraternity. So, is this finally preparing to officially recruit me to join Hydra? If so, what kind of emotion should I use? First shock, then panic after anger. Or is it the helplessness after stepping on the pirate ship? No matter what kind of expression, I have to show it just right. Facing a group of old silver coins, if my expression is slightly wrong, I am afraid it will be exposed. Just as Lin Hall was thinking, Barbara walked in with a white shirt and hip skirt. Boss, would you like a cup of coffee? Looking at the slim legs wrapped in black stockings, Lin Hall said, who matched this outfit for you? Besides, isn't your hair red? Why did you dye it blonde? Isn't Gwen's hair blonde? And boss, don't you like it? Shaking her blonde hair, Barbara came to Lynn and said with a smile, "And Alice told me that your favorite thing is black stockings and beautiful legs." Looking at Barbara, who deliberately showed off her strengths, Lynn shook her head and smiled. "Tisk, you are seducing your boss." "Yes, I am seducing you, what's wrong with that?" Barbara sat directly on Lynn Hall's lap without hiding her purpose at all. "Why do you have so many concerns when you meet someone you like?" "Boss, do you know how pitiful a girl who has never held hands or kissed a man at the age of 19 is? Other girls' children enjoy love when they are in high school or even middle school, but what about me? Because of my mutant identity, I have to be cautious every day, and I have to keep a distance from others when I study." Quote, "If I am not beautiful, it would be fine, but there are many people pursuing me, but I dare not approach them." Holding her hands around Lynn Hall's neck, Barbara smiled and said, "Anyway, you are protecting me now, so I will enjoy my ode youth." Feeling Lynn's hand gently stroking her beautiful legs, Barbara bit her lip, then leaned close to Lynn's ear and said, "Boss, do you think I don't know how many times you have secretly looked at my legs?" Listening to Barbara's soft voice, Lynn Hall patted her hips. "That's appreciation, and it's fair and above board. I don't care, anyway." Before she finished speaking, Barbara found that she was pressed directly to her knees on the ground. "Want to seduce me? Haha, it seems that you have to know the price of seducing your boss. On behalf of the Ministry of Justice, I sentence you to caning. Do you want to appeal?" Hearing what Lynn N said, Barbara subconsciously opened her mouth. This is the price of wanton enjoyment of youth. Ha, he took a long breath, picked up the remote control and turned on the TV hanging on the wall. On the TV, Tony Stark was being interviewed by a lot of media at the moment. Everyone was curious about what the mechanical prosthesis he was talking about was. At this moment, Tony Stark was shining in front of the camera, while Barbara, who was kneeling under the desk, looked very awkward. However, both Lynn N and Tony Stark were very excited at the moment. Until the mobile phone on the desk rang, Lynn N picked it up reluctantly. "Don't use your teeth. Haven't you eaten an ice cream cone?" He gently patted Barbara's head and looked at Barbara, who changed her strategy after rolling her eyes at him. Lynn Hall then picked up the phone. As soon as the call was connected, an excited voice came from the other end. "Mr. Hall, Stark Industries stock is going crazy. In a securities company in New Jersey. Watching Stark Industries soaring," securities manager Daniel West said excitedly. "The value of the Stark Industries stock you bought has now increased several times, and it is still rising." Especially after Tony Stark accepted a TV interview and said that the flying mechanical prosthesis was indeed made by him, the stock price soared all the way. "Mr. Hall." Halfway through the conversation, I heard that Lynn Hall's voice on the other end of the phone was a little bit wrong. Daniel West hurriedly said, "Mr. Hall, am I disturbing you?" "Nothing." Looking at the awkward Barbara, Lynn opened the drawer and took out the exploding candy left here by Senior Jessica and handed it to Barbara. In her confused look, Lynn motioned her to eat the popping candy. "Daniel, how many times has it increased?" "It's 7 times now, Mr. Hall. I think Stark Industries stock can at least increase 13 to 15 times. Daniel was a little surprised when Lynn Hall suddenly took a breath on the other end of the phone. "That's it, Daniel, you are a professional, just sell it when it's high." "Okay, Mr. Hall, I won't bother you for now." Hanging up the phone with a puzzled look on his face, Daniel scratched his head and continued to keep an eye on the stocks that were soaring. Half an hour later, Joey from the information department came to Lynn's office. Just as he was about to knock on the door, he heard Barbara coughing violently in the office. When he knocked on the door and entered the office, he looked at Barbara, who was drinking water from a cup with a strange look. Then he put the USB on Lynn's desk. "Boss, you asked me to hack into Obadiah Stan's computer, and the things I investigated have been found. He is indeed connected with the Middle Eastern armed forces that kidnapped Tony Stark, and he also secretly funded them with weapons and a lot of money. And I also followed the clues to find out the details of Stark industrial weapons that Obadiah Stan has sold to all parts of the world through private channels over the years. Boss, this guy not only sells weapons to the Middle East, but also to Africa, Eastern Europe and other places. I think there should be some forces behind him supporting him. It is very likely that someone in Congress or the military." After hearing what Joey said, Lynn Hall picked up the USB and plugged it into the computer to take a look. In addition to several videos, there are also some details, which record the list of various weapons sold and the information of buyers in detail. Thank you for your hard work, Joey. Boss, if you really think I've worked hard, then raise my level. Alice is already S14, and I'm only S12. Okay, let's talk about it after I become the supervisor next year. Tisk, you just keep making promises. Before turning around and leaving, Joey took a look at Barbara, who had returned to normal, sniffed the air lightly, and then laughed. Marbury Beach, in the villa of Tony Stark. How does it feel to be sought after by the media once again? Picking up the red wine and pouring himself a glass of wine, Lynn Hall looked at Tony Stark and asked with a smile, "You know that many people are amazed at your mechanical prosthesis online now. Isn't this normal?" Faced with Lynn's inquiry, Tony Stark spread his hands. "You know I can make circuit boards at the age of 4, build engines at the age of 6, join MIT at the age of 15, and even get it when I was 17. Got a double bachelor's degree in physics and engineering." Quote, "I've been used to things like being touted by the media and the public." Is that so? I remember some time ago, when you announced the permanent closure of the weapons manufacturing department, they scolded me so much. Looking at Tony, who pretended to be light on the surface but was actually arrogant, Lynn said with a smile. "Ha, they're just a bunch of stupid groundhogs. When I think of the fact that both the media and experts have criticized their decisions some time ago, even the members of the board of directors have put pressure on me." Tony Stark couldn't help but swear. "But during the period when you were criticized, Stark Industrial's stock price fell 70%, and I also took the opportunity to buy at the bottom and make a lot of money. Tisk, it seems that you still have vision. The only thing I want to know now is whether the old guys on the board will feel their faces hurt." Pick up the wine glass and Lynn for a moment, and Tony Stark drank the drink in one go. "I don't know if their faces hurt, I just know you'll have a headache soon." As he said that, Lynn Hall handed the USB drive to Tony Stark. "This is something you asked me to help you investigate, there are detailed records." Looking at the USB drive handed over by Lynn, Tony Stark's expression became solemn. After taking the USB drive and inserting it into the computer, Tony Stark opened the contents of the USB drive and started reading. Soon, Tony Stark's expression gradually became ugly. "Although there are speculations, I really didn't expect him to be so crazy." Watching Tony Stark look angry when he faces Obadiah Stein's guilt, Lynn Hall held the wine glass and savored the red wine. After a moment, Tony Stark, who calmed down, closed his laptop and looked at Lynn and said, "Thank you." "You're welcome." Faced with Tony's thanks, Lynn Hall asked, "What are you going to do next?" "If you want to bring him to justice, then I will just have someone arrest him." Regarding Obadiah Stein 7's favorability, Lynn felt it was time for VIP number 1 to add a guest. Call. Drinking all the wine in the glass in one gulp, Tony Stark was silent for a few seconds and said, "I don't understand why he must do this." For money. His money is enough for him to live for several lifetimes. For power. He has been managing Stark Industry, and he has no shortage of fame and status. But Stark Industrial's surname is Stark, I think that's the biggest reason. Tony Stark fell into silence again when he heard Lynn telling the reason why Obadiah Stane did this. Let me think. Until he sent Lynn Hall away, Tony Stark didn't say anything to ask Lynn to help arrest him. Half an hour later, when Pepper came to help with the living room of the villa was in a mess. Cups and bottles were scattered all over the floor, and even the pure wool carpet was soaked in wine. "Tony." Looking at Tony Stark's red eyes, Pepper stepped forward with concern and asked. But I saw Tony shook his head and said, "I'm fine." Although I don't know what happened, Pepper still stepped forward and comforted, "No matter what happens, I will be with you." Faced with Pepper's gentle comfort, Tony forced out some smiles. "So, do you want your boss to give you a raise? If you can, don't even think about it." Rearing on the sofa, Tony Stark stared at the ceiling and murmured, "I have always trusted him, Pepper, I even regarded him as my uncle." Looking at Tony, who was heartbroken when he was betrayed, Pepper pondered for a moment, then stood up to help him clean up the living room. Looking at Pepper's figure slightly cleaning up the living room, Tony Stark's eyes were full of hesitation. Manhattan, within the large flat floor of Central Park. Using the black card given by the vampire, Lynn Hall finally bought the large flat lair he had longed for. Not only that, Lynn Hall also created a training room. In the training room at this moment, Lynn Hall was testing Gwen's ability. Gwen, who was bitten by a spider, had good speed, strength and agility at this time. Spider sensing could even predict the enemy's attack method. The only thing I lack is speed and strength, but no fighting skills. It's okay to deal with the gangsters on the street, but once you meet a real strong man, you will definitely suffer a big loss. Just like Lin, if the test just now was a life and death battle, then when fighting, Lin could easily kill her at any time. Hu Lin, something's wrong with you. After stopping the test, Gwen looked at Lin Hall and said, although you let me off when I fought just now, your strength is obviously not at the level of a normal person. And for a full 10 minutes, I didn't even touch the corner of your clothes. How is that possible? Could it be that you were bitten by a spider, too? Looking at Gwen's sparkling eyes, Lin Hall raised his hand and tapped her head gently. I am the top agent. Although your reaction speed is good, your fighting skills are simply terrible. As he said that, Lin turned around to get some water. Looking at Lin's back, Gwen's eyes turned. Then he picked up a baseball on the ground and threw it directly at Lin's back. The moment the baseball touched Lin's back, he disappeared from Gwen's sight. The spider sense instantly detected someone behind her, but before she turned around, she was hugged by Lin from behind. Tisk, you actually want to sneak attack me? Kissed Gwen's earlobe, Lin En smiled and said, why, do you have to know my extraordinary ability? Are you satisfied now? Although the ability of teleportation is Lin En's trump card to save his life, he did not intend to hide it from Gwen. Firstly, Gwen will definitely keep the secret for him, and secondly, after Gwen becomes Spider-Woman, the two of them will definitely have the opportunity to fight side by side in the future. If the two people fighting side by side are not familiar with each other's abilities, they will definitely not be able to exert the greatest effect. Feeling the warm breath beside her ears, Gwen's face instantly turned red. Itchy. Subconsciously shrinking her neck, Gwen turned around and hugged Lin and said, you still say you are an ordinary person. Lin, are you a mutant? Looking at Gwen's bright eyes, Lin Hall smiled and said, no, it's almost the same as you being bitten by a spider. I also acquired this ability after birth. Let's not talk about this for now. I will teach you some simple combat skills first. With your spider sense, it is enough to deal with most enemies. Yeah, hearing Lin say this, Gwen nodded immediately. The best way to train is always actual combat. So for the next week, Lin will take 2 hours every afternoon to conduct combat training with Gwen. At the same time, in Stark Industries, Obadiah Stan's office. Tony, although our plummeting stock price has recovered, it has even increased a lot more than before. But after the weapons manufacturing department was closed, Stark Industries lost its mainstream business, which made the board members very dissatisfied. Although I am trying my best to appease them, you have to come up with a corresponding business that can replace weapons. Looking at Obadiah Stan's earnest persuasion in front of him, Tony Stark's eyes were quite complicated. Ever since he got the evidence from Lin, Tony Stark has been hesitating. After all, he has always trusted Obadiah Stan very much, and even regarded him as his uncle. But now, when he saw him just after the board meeting, he once again put on an, I'm doing this for your own good, look. Tony Stark just felt sick in his heart. Suppressing the emotions in his heart, Tony Stark looked at Obadiah Stan and said, what do you think? I have to say, Tony, you are indeed a genius. Your mechanical prosthesis is very good and has made a great impact. Now many people hope to have the mechanical prosthesis you made. Looking at Tony, Obadiah Stan smiled and said, I think if you can sell it, the market value of Stark Industries will definitely. Don't even think about it. Hearing Obadiah Stan's proposal, Tony Stark refused without hesitation. That is my armor, not a toy that can be sold at will. Tony, that's it. Standing up and looking at Obadiah Stan who wanted to say something, Tony Stark said, I will find new products that can replace weapons. For now, the new energy and clean industry is very good. After that, Tony Stark turned and left. Looking at Tony's back as he left, Obadiah Stan's eyes flashed with a hint of sinisterness. After thinking for a moment, he picked up the phone on the table and asked the RU00260 department to come over. Leaving Obadiah's office and returning to the car, Tony Stark took out his phone and looked at Rhodes' number. After hesitating for a moment, he scrolled down and found Lin Hall's number and dialed it. In the training room, hearing the phone ringing, Lin Hall paused Gwen's actual combat training. After taking a sip of soda water, he answered the phone and said, Tony. Well, actually nothing, I just finished the board meeting. Subconsciously fiddling with the audio buttons in the car, Tony Stark said, "By the way, didn't you say you bought Stark Industries stocks last time? How is it, are you making crazy money?" Although I don't know what Tony wants to do by calling me, I can hear him looking for a topic insincerely. Lynn Hall smiled and said, "I really made a lot of money. Now the stock price is much more stable, so I'm going to sell it." "I suggest you don't sell it yet. Just now, the old guys on the board of directors wanted to force me to sell my armor. You know, Lynn, I will never sell armor as a commodity." Tony Stark took a sip of dark green vegetable juice from the co-pilot and looked at the building outside the car window and said, "But Stark Industries does need some mainstream business to replace the weapons manufacturing department. I think new energy is a good project and can be used in all fields. So, I suggest you hold Stark Industries stock for a while." Training room. Looking at Lynn making a phone call, Gwen's eyes flashed with a hint of mischief, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and then she walked up and kissed Lynn, then pulled Lynn and pressed him on the chair. Blinked at Lynn provocatively, and then knelt in front of the chair. "Actually, I am." Hearing that, Lynn Hall stopped talking on the other end of the phone. Tony Stark leaned back in his chair and hesitated for a moment. "Okay, I just want to tell you that he has made a decision. Since he has helped me keep Stark Industries for all these years, I decided to give him another chance. I will keep a close eye on him. As long as he makes any unusual moves, he will not escape the eyes of the great Tony Stark. Of course, the reason I told you is because you helped me investigate this matter, and I have to inform you for both emotional and rational reasons." After that, Tony Stark waited for Lynn Hall's thoughts. But after waiting for a long time, he did not hear Lynn Hall's suggestions. "Hey, Lynn, why do I feel something is wrong with your aura?" In the training room, gently stroking Gwen's beautiful blonde hair, looking at Gwen's provocative eyes when she raised her head. Knowing that she was retaliating for throwing her to the mat many times during actual combat training. So Lynn Hall smiled and said, "Of course I'm training. You know I'm the top agent, so I have to keep training every day." "Wow, it's really hard work." Shrugged, Tony Stark said, "What do you think of my proposal?" "Oh, you mean you want to give Obadiah Stane another chance, right? This is your choice, as long as you can bear the consequences of this choice. Everyone is an adult, so Lynn can give Tony Stark some advice, but he can't make decisions for him. After all, Tony Stark's favorability towards him is only 6, and he is just a good friend. And according to his arrogant personality, even when facing Pepper, he keeps a dead duck mouth. I won't give him any chance to retaliate against me." Tony started the car and said, "But I am a little curious about the daily training of you top agents. I would like to see it if I have a chance." Listening to Tony's words and looking at Gwen who was helping him train, Lynn Hall shrugged. "This is not worth seeing." After the training was finished, Gwen ran to the bathroom to rinse her mouth. Lynn Hall cleaned up the training room. When she came out, Lynn Hall waved and motioned her to sit next to him. Sitting on Lynn's legs, Gwen wished she could stick to Lynn. "Let's talk business." He gently pushed Gwen's head, trying to get this clingy person off him. But he found that Gwen was like an octopus, hugging Lynn Hall and not letting go. "I won't." She tilted her head and looked at Lynn, her white feet shaking, and Gwen's eyes were full of the desire to stick to her. "It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon now, and we can only stick to each other for 2 hours at most, so I won't let go. Besides, this doesn't stop you from talking about business." After a week of actual combat training, Gwen was very happy to have time to stick to Lynn every day. Gwen was even happier when she thought that she could live here every day after going to college next year. Hee. She leaned over to Lynn's mouth and kissed him, looking at Lynn pretending to be disgusted. Gwen stiffened her neck and said, "You are still disgusted with your own things. Besides, I have rinsed my mouth. Let's talk business." After flicking Gwen's forehead, Lynn smiled and said, "Although more than a week of actual combat training cannot make you reach the top level, it is combined with your spider sense and various physical fitness. It is enough to deal with ordinary mutants. I want to talk to you now. After gaining these abilities, what are you going to do with it?" Seeing Lynn's serious look, Gwen did not hide it. "Actually, I have thought about it." "Lynn, do you still remember that concert? Mutant Adam Morris committed a tragedy-esque concert." "That's right." Looking at Lynn, Gwen said seriously, "He was shooting at the audience indiscriminately on the stage, and I was thinking when you protected me. If I had superhuman abilities, I could save those innocent civilians from his gun. Then when I saw you and Mr. Bald fighting against the mutant, I was really worried that you would get into trouble. I really wanted to help you, but I was powerless, and I knew that if I shouted or moved, it would distract you." Hearing Gwen say this, Lynn Hall patted her on the back gently. Even Mr. Bald didn't know what Coulson would think when he heard Gwen call him that. "I don't want to be a hero, but Lynn, I want to be someone who can protect innocent people." Looking into Lynn's eyes, Gwen said firmly, "I still can't forget the wailing of the wounded and the fearful and desperate eyes of the dead. I don't want to see this happen again. If I don't have this ability, it's fine, but now that God has given me this ability, then I don't want to live up to it." At this point, Gwen rubbed Lynn's neck like a kitten. "You will definitely support me, right?" Looking at Gwen's very serious eyes, Lynn Hall was silent for a few seconds, then smiled and said, "I knew you would make this choice." Pat Gwen's hips and let her get off him. "Get up and leave the training room." A few minutes later, Lynn Hall came in with some things. "What is this?" "The battle suit prepared for you and some gadgets." Unpacking the package, Lynn Hall first took out the spider battle suit with black and white as the main body, and embellished with blue, purple and red. This suit is not only fashionable and beautiful, but also gives people a temperament of toughness and softness. And Lin N has added some changes to the original spider suit in his memory. The white one-piece hood and some storage devices on the waist allow her to maximize her abilities. "I originally wanted to use nanotechnology to make a suit, but the current technology is not in place, but I have thought about it. When someone's nanotechnology matures, I will get you a nano armor." In addition, this suit is made of special materials. Not only is it soft and ductile, but its defensive properties are also very good. Neither a dagger nor a bullet can penetrate this suit. Looking at Gwen taking the suit with joy, she seemed to be eager to wear it. Lynn Hall picked up various gadgets and continued to introduce them. "This is an electrode sheet. It can release 500 volts of current in an instant, which can instantly electrocute the enemy. This is a micro bomb. Don't be fooled by its small size, but its power can easily blow up a building." Lin N took out a tactical pen and said, "This is a multifunctional tactical pen. Pressing the button once can release a poison needle, and pressing it twice can release a corrosive liquid. If you are trapped in a secret room or want to enter a certain place, the corrosive liquid can come in handy. And this ring, as long as you turn it gently, a blade will pop out, and you can also cut the enemy's throat in close combat. This is a distress device. I usually wear it on my wrist. Once I encounter danger, I can tap it twice and I can receive the distress call in the first time. And this." Gwen's eyes gradually changed from surprise to gentleness as she watched Lynn take out one gadget after another and introduce them to her. She knew that these were things that Lynn got through the FBI or other channels, and they were specially used to save her life. After Lynn finally introduced the functions of all the things to her, Gwen couldn't help but throw herself into Lynn's arms. Seeing Gwen's eyes full of emotion, Lynn patted her back gently and said, "These things I got for you are very small. Usually put them in the storage belt of the battle suit, and they won't hinder your actions. By the way, there is also a spider silk launcher I have already let." Without waiting for Lynn to finish, Gwen tiptoed and kissed Lynn directly on the mouth. After hugging and kissing Lynn N for several minutes, Gwen looked at him with gentle eyes. "You are afraid that I will encounter some danger?" "Of course, hee. In fact, I have almost conceived the spider silk launcher. I just need to find some chemical materials to make it." As she said, Gwen picked up the spider suit and admired it, and then she couldn't wait to change it. After changing into the spider suit, Gwen proudly asked with her graceful curves, "How is it?" "Very good. I am looking forward to it more and more." New York has a good neighbor Spider Woman. Chapter 51. In a van in an alley in Queens. The whole network is reporting on Tony Stark's mechanical prosthesis. No one cares about what happened in the town under Oswego's jurisdiction. Looking at the information on the internet, Green frowned and said to his companion on the communication video, "Isn't this normal?" Faced with Green's complaints, his companions were very open-minded. "Compared to us uncovering the truth hidden by the government, the public is more willing to spy on the lives of celebrities, especially their private lives." Now, the news of Tony Stark's mechanical prosthesis has overshadowed the truth of the town under Oswego's rule. But when the video of Tony Stark and a Hollywood actress in bed is exposed, do you believe that the public will immediately forget about the mechanical prosthesis? Hearing his companion's answer, Green asked curiously, "You actually have a video of Tony Stark and a Hollywood actress in bed? Which actress is it? Look, even you are like this, not to mention those ordinary people far away from that town." Looking at his companion's spreading hands, Green was silent for a moment and said, "Ovis, the concept of our Tide organization is to uncover the truth hidden by the government and return the right to know to the public. No matter what, I will thoroughly investigate what happened in the town, and I hope you can. I don't recommend you to continue doing this." Looking at the person who still wanted Orvis asked Green to help him, and he shook his head and said, "The person who dealt with the town this time is Lynn Hall of the New York FBI. Believe me, Green, he is not someone we can afford to provoke. Why, didn't we also fool the FBI before? Orvis, I hope you can give me some help." Hearing Orvis's retreat, Green said anxiously, "I need more detailed information. Since the FBI blocked the town, I have used various methods to find out the follow-up of the matter. For this reason, I even hacked into the military satellite monitoring database, but unfortunately I didn't even find a photo of the town. I don't believe that the town was really bombed as said in the press conference. It was a terrorist attack by the Bear. Orvis, as the strongest hacker of the Tide organization, I hope you can." Before Green finished anxiously, Orvis said directly, "Don't think about it, Green. I said that the leader of the team is Lynn Hall, you can't afford to provoke him." After that, Orvis hung up the video directly. After the video ended, Orvis turned his head and looked at an old man sitting not far away and said, "Sir, the Tide organization is getting more and more out of control. I suggest that from now on, we should do a blood transfusion within the Tide organization, otherwise the Tide organization will sooner or later be out of our control." Hearing Ovis' words, the old man sitting on the sofa with a cigar laughed and said, "In this case, you will be in charge of this blood transfusion. Disobedient beasts should be skinned and eaten." "Yes, sir." Hearing the old man's order, Ovis nodded immediately, and then the photos of several people appeared on the computer. However, looking at one of the girls named Sky, Ovis thought about it and marked her with a spare sign. Then the list of the other people was transmitted out. After doing all this, Orvis turned his head and looked at the old man and said, "Sir, do you need me to create an internal file for Lynn Hall, who we are recruiting?" "Not for now." Waving his hand, the old man pressed the cigar in his hand into the ashtray. "He has only joined the Brotherhood and has not really become one of us. Even if he officially joins us, he can't get real trust if he doesn't pass the test. There is still a week before the engagement ceremony of the daughter of the deputy director of the FBI begins. Everything will be discussed after the engagement ceremony is over." "Yes, sir." Hearing what the old man said, Orvis nodded. At the same time, in the van. FUXX. Watching Orvis hang up the video, Green cursed in a low voice. He didn't understand. They were both FBI. What ability did the guy named Lynn Hall have to make people like Orvis retreat? Looking at the small town video he posted, it was swept into the garbage dump because of the loss of attention. Green took a deep breath, then put on his headphones and prepared to continue releasing new videos about the town. The conclusion of the case at the press conference was false. This was not a biological virus created by the Bear, and the destruction of the town was not a terrorist attack by the Bear. The public needs to know the truth. Just as he was recording the video with an excited tone with a headset, the next second the van was pulled away in an instant. The burly man in the lead pulled him out of the car without hesitation and pressed him to the ground. The other woman walked into the car and operated on his laptop. "Let me go. Who are you? You are kidnapping, are you?" Before the roaring voice was finished, a pair of brand new leather shoes appeared in front of him. He tried to raise his head and looked up, only to see a handsome young man looking at him with a smile. Green Tracy, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, a member of the Rising Tide organization, insists on the idea that the public should have the right to know, and has hacked into the military database 7 times and the Pentagon for this purpose. "Who are you?" Looking at this young man who not only knows his name, but also knows what he has done. Green struggled to ask. "Lynn Hall, FBI, New York." Signaling Sean to pull him up from the ground, Lynn Hall looked at the handcuffed Green and said, "I have always been kind to others, so whether you invaded the military satellite or the Pentagon, I can pretend not to see it. But you shouldn't continue to investigate the town under Oswego. Are you Lynn Hall? Have you heard of me? The people have the right to know the truth, and you hid those things. Before Green finished speaking, Joey came out with a notebook. Boss, he is still posting videos about that town, and there are some very interesting things in the computer. In addition, I found some chat records about members of the Tide organization in this computer. Hearing what Joey said, Green immediately struggled to rush over to destroy the computer. But the next second, he was kicked in the knee by Sean and knelt on the ground. Can you find other members of the Tide Rising organization through the internet? I need some time. No problem. Looking at Green kneeling on the ground under Sean's pressure, Lynn Hall smiled and said, what we lack the most is time. Hey, what are you doing? It's daytime, are you kidnapping? Just as Lynn Hall ordered Sean to take people away, a young man's voice appeared at the entrance of the alley. Turning around and looking at the entrance of the alley, I saw a guy wearing a spider suit blocking the entrance of the alley. But compared to the classic spider suit, this suit in front of me is obviously a combination of several clothes. Not only does it not fit, it is even a bit bloated. What's more, this Spider-Man is holding a box of eggs in his hand. The moment he saw this freak, Sean immediately pulled out his pistol and prepared to let him go. But he was stopped by Lynn. Although it was unexpected that the spider bit Gwen and bit other people. But it was obvious that the newly debuted Spider-Man in front of him was Peter Parker. Because he hasn't learned to hide his voice yet. Similarly, Peter Parker, who was holding a box of eggs at the moment, also recognized Lynn. So after realizing that it was Lynn who led people to arrest criminals, Peter Parker immediately said, sorry, Mr. Lynn, I didn't know that your FBI was arresting criminals, I'm really sorry. Halfway through his words, Peter Parker immediately covered his mouth. He actually called out Lynn's name directly. Looking at Peter Parker, who is still a spider rookie and has no experience at all. Lynn Hall pretended not to know him and walked up to him. Who are you? Why do you know my identity? Faced with Lynn's questioning, Peter Parker was suddenly a little flustered. After stuttering for a long time, he suddenly had an idea and said, that's because I've seen you, Mr. Lynn Hall, on TV. On TV? Yes sir, it was the press conference after Tony Stark was rescued from the Middle East. In order not to expose himself too much, Peter Parker took 2 steps back, then used the spider silk launcher to stick to the roof and jumped up. Sorry to disturb you, and I'm Spider-Man. As Peter Parker hurriedly fled the scene, Lynn Hall laughed. A Spider-Man and a Spider-Woman, New York will be lively in the future. Boss, what kind of Spider-Man does that guy say he is? Coming to Lynn, Sean smiled and said, I've never heard of such a guy in New York. Maybe he's a new kid. Forget it, Sean, you and Joey take this guy back for interrogation first, and see what you can pry out of him. Yes. Hearing Lynn's order, Sean nodded immediately. Lynn N opened the Chevrolet and said to Dennis, get in my car, let's go meet the 2 little girls. Okay, boss. Hearing what Lynn N said, Dennis Johnson nodded and sat in the passenger seat of Lynn N. 10 minutes later, in a community in Queens. Boss, I have already told Laura and Polaris about today's meeting. They should be waiting for us at home. Getting down from the car, Dennis Johnson said, but boss, are you sure it's just the 2 of us going, and we don't need to send anyone? Didn't you say that these 2 little girls won't hurt others? Looking at Dennis, Lynn N smiled and patted his shoulder. You are my subordinate, so I naturally believe what you say, not to mention that we are going to visit, not to arrest, there is no need to make such a big fuss. Looking at Lynn N's trusting eyes, Dennis was moved. He didn't expect that the boss would trust him so much. You know, although Laura and Polaris are young, one is 13 years old and the other is 14 years old. But they are mutants after all, and they are mutants with a high threat level. But despite this, the boss came here without any preparation because of his words. Thinking of this, Dennis took a deep breath and then pressed the doorbell. Now he finally understood why Sean, Alice and the others were willing to take bullets for the boss. What Dennis was thinking, Lynn N naturally didn't know. But even if he knew, Lynn N would only say that young people are still easy to deceive. In fact, in this week, Lynn N had already investigated Laura and Polaris's past, including what happened to them in the orphanage and what they did after leaving the orphanage. Otherwise, even if Lynn N coveted the abilities of these 2 little girls, he would never bring Dennis to the door so easily. In the room, Dennis is here with his boss. Wearing two ponytails, Laura turned her head and looked at Polaris with dark green hair and a somewhat melancholy expression and said. Hearing Laura's words, Polaris closed his eyes and felt it for a while, then shook his head. There is no ambush, there are only two of them around. That means Dennis's statement is credible. Walking forward and holding Polaris' arm, Laura said with a smile, Lorna, this is the first time I know that there are people from official organizations who are kind to us. Don't be careless. Looking at Laura's smiling face, Polaris Lorna Dane looked outside. I don't believe them, even if they show kindness to us, who knows what they are planning in secret. Don't forget the disaster 2 years ago, if not. Oh, I know. Hearing that Polaris was about to talk about the incident 2 years ago, Laura smiled and said, don't worry, I will let him tell his true purpose. Besides, this is brought by Dennis, and we have nowhere else to go. We might as well see what this FBI guy wants to do. As soon as the words were finished, the doorbell rang outside the door. I'll go open the door. After saying this, Laura ran to the door and opened it. The moment the door opened, Laura looked at Dennis and Lynn, and a hallucinogenic light flashed in her eyes, and then she pretended to smile and said, Dennis, long time no see, welcome to visit here. Long time no see, Laura, Polaris. Greeted the two people, and then Dennis introduced Lynn Hall to the two people. After entering the room, Lynn Hall looked at the two little girls calmly. Obviously, it was just as Dennis said. Laura is cheerful, while Polaris is a bit gloomy. Although the two seem harmless, Polaris is actually ready to attack at any time. If any accident happens, Polaris will attack and then take Laura away. Please drink water. After inviting Lynn and Dennis to take the seat, Laura was very obedient and sensible to receive a glass of water for Lynn and Dennis, and then sat next to Polaris. Thanks. After taking the water cup, Lynn did not drink it, but looked at Laura and Polaris and said, I heard Dennis mention you. The purpose of this time is to help you. Mr. Lynn Hall, I don't feel like our sisters need your help. Hearing Lynn's words, Polaris's cold tone was filled with self-protection. Is that true? The military's wanted order will not be fake, right? Seeing Lynn say this, Dennis, who was about to pick up a cup of water to drink water, looked at Laura and North Star in surprise. Are you wanted by the military? Why haven't I ever heard you mention this matter? Faced with Dennis' surprise, the well-behaved Laura hadn't waited to speak, and a trace of gloom flashed in Polaris's eyes. That's the military persecuting us just because we are mutants. The reason is not that simple. Looking at the cool North Star, Lynn smiled and said, the reason why the military wants you is because when you came to New York from Ohio, you used your ability to kill 2 men. The police found the body and transferred it to the surveillance monitor. After confirming that it was a mutant who committed the crime, they chose to report it. After receiving the report, the military issued a wanted order to you. You should be glad that the military's main goal is the collapsed Brotherhood of Mutants. Plus, your sisters are still young, so they didn't take you in their hearts, otherwise, you should be in prison or in the laboratory now. Hearing Lynn's words, Polaris snorted. Those 2 people are more than dead, they actually want to molest us. We're just trying to protect ourselves. Do you think the military will listen to you for these reasons? Taking out the phone and put it on the table, Lynn smiled and pushed it in front of them. Of course, the most important thing is that Colonel Stryker doesn't know that you, Lorna Dane, is Magneto's daughter. Otherwise, before he could finish his words, North Star's body burst out with great energy in an instant. The items in the room also rose into the air in an instant. The tips of some cutlery in the kitchen were aimed at Lynn Hall, as if they could penetrate Lynn Hall's body in the next second. Stop. Seeing this scene, Dennis immediately stood up to protect Lynn, and at the same time said to Polaris in an anxious tone, Polaris, the boss has no malice to you and Laura. Otherwise, this time we will be a large number of fully armed FBI agents. Looking at Dennis, who was blocking Lynn and trying to use his body to help Lynn Hall to resist the damage, Polaris said in a cold tone, get out of the way, otherwise I will kill you together. North Star, calm down. Laura, please persuade me. Go aside, Dennis, there is no danger here. Pat Dennis on the shoulder and Lynn let him sit down. I am worthy of being Magneto's daughter, and I have great abilities. Are you not afraid? Looking at Lin Nang, who was in the vortex of danger, had no fear at all. Polaris, fingers gently stroked, and a knife floated directly in front of Lin. Since you know that I am Magneto's daughter, then you should know that it's easy for me to kill you. Are you sure? Looking at the cold little eyes of North Star, Lin Hall raised his hand to hold the knife in front of him, and disappeared in an instant the next second. What about now? The sharp blade pressed against Polaris' neck, and Lin Hall stood behind Polaris and smiled. Do you still think it's easy to kill me now? Feeling the coldness between the neck, the North Star's pupils instantly contracted. This was the first time she faced the threat of death. Even as long as Lin makes a light move, his throat will be easily cut open by him. He raised his hand and patted the Polaris head gently. Lin Hall threw away the knife. Remember, don't be so irritable next time. As he said that, Lin sat back on the sofa, always keeping a bright smile on his face. Now, can we have a good talk? Are you a mutant too? Looking at Lin's movement just teleported behind Polaris, Laura's eyes immediately released a gleam. That makes sense, no wonder you don't discriminate against us, fear us, and even brought Dennis into the FBI. No wonder Dennis always said that you have a lot of kindness to mutants. Oh my god, I didn't expect you to be our own people. Looking at Laura, she was very excited, as if she had gone through so many hardships and finally found the organization. Even the Polar Star, which was originally a little gloomy and irritable, looked at Lin Nang with a much warmer look. Only Dennis looked at Lin with a little confused. No, when did the boss become a mutant? You should know that since the first mutant war, the official organization has found a way to effectively distinguish between ordinary people and mutants. Just perform genetic testing to distinguish the two. If you want to join a department with great power like the FBI, genetic testing will definitely not be able to escape. So, how could the boss be a mutant? Lin Hall didn't care about Dennis, who was a little skeptical about his life. Laura Belloc's favorability, 4. Lorna Dane's favorability, 3. Looking at the system, the two girls suddenly showed strong favorability because they misunderstood that they were the same kind. Lin Hall didn't intend to explain this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is misunderstanding. Anyway, it will be of great help to gain their favorability and trust. Can the hallucination effect be removed? From the first moment Dennis and I entered the room, I think I was in a hallucination. Of course, clapped his hands happily, and the furnishings in the room changed instantly in the next second. Even the glass on the table turned into an ordinary paper cup. Well, Mr. Hall, how did you find out that you were hallucinating? Removing the hallucinations in Lin and Dennis' minds, Laura asked curiously. Don't mind, I just want to know why you were looking for us sisters. At that time, I didn't know that you were also a mutant, so. I can understand. Nodding gently, Lin Hall smiled and said, I have investigated your information and know that you are very resistant to the official organization. Now that the official organization has come directly to your door, you must be full of vigilance and want to know what my real purpose is. Plus, I learned about your ability from Dennis, so I did a little test before entering the room. It turned out that there was no pain when the needle pierced my finger, so I can be sure that you have used hallucinogenic ability on me. In a special prison in a remote area in New Jersey. The prison guard sent the special meal tray in through the small window, and looked at Magneto, who was resting with his eyes closed in the cell, and said, It's time for lunch. Hearing the voice of the prison guard, Magneto did not move, and still sat there quietly with his eyes closed. Seeing that Magneto was motionless, the prison guard pushed the meal tray in again, and whispered, I have told Mystique where you are imprisoned. It won't take long for her to find a way to rescue you. Hearing the words of the prison guard, Magneto continued to close his eyes, but asked, Lorna. I heard from the owl that she and Laura were taken away by the FBI. Before the prison guard finished speaking, Magneto opened his eyes instantly. Seeing this scene, the prison guard subconsciously took a step back. How did the hyenas find Lorna? Didn't I ask Owl to protect Lorna in secret? Ask Raven to gather the members of the Brotherhood of Mutants immediately and rescue Lorna at all costs. Hearing Magneto's order, the prison guard said, according to the information fed back by Owl, Lorna and Laura voluntarily followed the FBI agent to leave. She saw it clearly. Lorna even took the initiative to get into the FBI agent's car. What? Hearing that Lorna was voluntary, Magneto frowned. Before he could continue, the prison guard continued. In addition, since you failed in the last war, Mystique said that most of the members of the Brotherhood of Mutants have been recruited by a mysterious force. Now time is running out. Do you have anything you want me to convey to Mystique? Faced with the prison guard's question, Magneto was silent for a few seconds. Tell Raven not to rush to rescue me, and find a way to find out why Lorna was willing to be taken away by that FBI agent. If Lorna is deceived, or if that FBI agent is going to hurt Lorna, kill him immediately. Got it. Nodding calmly, the prison guard took out the dinner plate. Forget it if you don't want to eat it. After saying that, he turned and left. Leaving the cell passage and passing through the inspection room, the prison guard put the dinner plate on the table. Dane, Magneto doesn't want to eat lunch again. The two prison guards in charge of guarding saw him coming out with a dinner plate, and asked with a smile. Oh, if he doesn't want to eat, forget it. Anyway, we just need to make sure he doesn't starve to death. Speaking of this, Dane glanced at his watch. By the way, I have already asked for leave. I will go to the hospital to visit my daughter in the afternoon. After saying goodbye to his companions, Dane went back to the locker room to change clothes. Driving out of the prison, after passing through layers of military inspections outside, Dane left smoothly. On the way, he took out his mobile phone and called Mystique. After conveying Magneto's words, Dane hung up the phone. A few minutes later, seeing that there was an extra sum of money in his account, Dane put down his mobile phone and drove towards the hospital. He was just a mouthpiece. As long as he conveyed a message once, he could get a considerable reward. A few more times, the treatment fee for his daughter would be enough. At the same time, at the home of a congressman in New York. You heard it, Smith, Magneto's daughter was taken away by FBI agents. Hearing what Mystique Raven said, Smith sat on the chair and said, with owls watching secretly, Lorna will be fine. Now I just want to know where you are holding Lena. Looking at the question in Smith's eyes, Mystique leaned back in the chair and smiled. I know she is the only light in your dark childhood, but she has been married to this congressman for 5 years, and you still miss her. Smith, this is inconsistent with your reputation as an executioner. Looking at Mystique's joke, Smith's dark green pupils instantly turned completely black. Okay, don't be nervous. She's still in New York. I said I won't hurt her for your sake. Smith, her husband, the congressman, has been killed by us. Wait until we rescue Magneto and establish the mutant nation. Maybe you can marry her. I believe Eric won't mind you marrying an ordinary person. His pupils turned dark green again, and Smith stood up and said, I'll go find Owl and rescue Lorna. Wait, seeing Smith about to leave, Raven stopped him. Don't worry about rescuing Lorna. With Owl, that little fool, watching, Lorna won't be in danger. Our main goal is to rescue Magneto. Let's find a way to gather people. Okay. Hearing Raven's words, Smith nodded. After he left, Raven picked up a photo that was pressed by a document. The photo was the scene of Lynn Hall taking Lorna, Laura and Dennis to sit in the Chevrolet. Obviously, she knew at the moment Lynn Hall took Lorna away. Inside the FBI building. After entering the FBI department, Laura and Lorna were full of curiosity. They never thought that one day they could enter the official department openly. Barbara, who was watching variety shows on the computer at the moment, saw the boss coming in with 2 little girls. Then he asked curiously, Boss, where did you trick these 2 little girls from? Listening to Barbara's words, Lynn Hall returned to his seat and said, Take them to handle the entry procedures and tell the Human Resources Department to use the special talent recruitment terms. Also, arrange a school for them. We won't go to school. Hearing that Lynn was going to arrange for the 2 of them to go to school, Laura and Lorna spoke at the same time. Little sister, you can't not study. Looking at the 2 little girls, one well-behaved and the other melancholy, Barbara smiled and said, Don't worry, I will arrange a good one for you. Lynn, can't we not go to school? Pulling Lynn's sleeve, Laura said coquettishly, You promised us to let us sisters stay with you. Don't worry, Lorna and I can definitely help you with our abilities. Looking at Laura and Lorna's resistance to going to school, Lynn thought for a moment, then said, It's okay if you don't go to school, but I will arrange for someone to teach you. Barbara, take them to go through the entry procedures first. By the way, there is no need for genetic testing. Understood. Hearing what Lynn said, Barbara looked at Laura and the others with a friendly look. It seems that these 2 little girls, like herself, are mutants recruited by the boss. Let Barbara take Laura and the other 2 to go through the job application process. With the identity of FBI agents, the 2 of them don't have to hide from place to place every day. In fact, Lynn was ready to take the 2 little girls with him from the beginning. Firstly, whether it is Laura's hallucinogenic ability or Polaris' weakened version of Magneto's ability, they can help Lynn at critical moments. Secondly, it is also convenient to brush up the favorability. He took a look at the variety show that Barbara had just been watching, which was a variety show with the gimmick of mysticism, such as exorcism and haunted house adventure. Lynn Hall laughed, then took out his mobile phone and sent a message to Gwen. Compared to Peter Parker wearing a bloated version of the spider suit. These 2 days, Gwen has officially stepped onto the stage of New York City as Spider-Woman. Her first target is a group of drug dealers from Mexico, who seem to be the group of guys that Uncle George has been keeping an eye on recently. Drug dealers are always ruthless, and Gwen has just debuted, so Lynn is naturally a little worried. After looking at Gwen's reply, Lynn told her not to act rashly, and then put away her phone. Gwen's first battle, Lynn naturally had to watch it in person to feel at ease. In the evening, Lynn was in the large flat in Central Park. Since you don't want to live with Barbara, you can live here from today. After arranging Laura and Lorna to live in the guest room, Lynn ordered some takeout. Then he said to the two, "I have something to do tonight and I won't be back. You have a good rest." Okay, X2 nodded very obediently, and waited until Lynn left. Polaris then said to Laura, "Laura, why do we have to live with Lynn? Although he, an adult, will not have any thoughts about the two of us, we are two girls after all, which is very inconvenient." Facing Polaris's inquiry, Laura shrugged and took out a bottle of water from the refrigerator and handed it to her. Seeing that Lorna didn't take it, Laura drank it by herself. "Laura, don't you always want to know which prison your father Magneto is in?" "I don't want to know." Hearing Laura's words, Polaris's face suddenly became gloomy. "I don't care whether he lives or dies." Looking at the stubborn Polaris, Laura smiled and walked up to her and held her hand. "Come on, Lorna, don't I know what you are thinking? Believe me, Lorna, with Lin N's status and position, he must know where your father is imprisoned. Although you have been stubbornly saying that you don't want to see her, sometimes you dream of calling Dad." Hearing Laura say this, Polaris was silent for a while. "I just want to find him and ask him why he adopted me after my parents died when I was 3 years old, and sent me to an orphanage when I was 7 years old." Looking at Polaris, who obviously wanted to have a family, but was still stubborn, Laura smiled and said, okay, whether you want to find your father or want to ask him why he abandoned you, we need Lin's help. Believe me, when we are completely familiar with Lin, he will definitely find a way to let you see your father." Looking at Laura's solemn look, Polaris nodded gently and said, "Thank you, Laura." "Hee, you're welcome. Don't forget what you said, you will always protect me in the future." At 7 o'clock in the evening, the sky gradually darkened. "I'm so sleepy today, Mom and Dad, I'm going to rest first." Yawned, Gwen said to George and Helen, and then ran back to the room. Seeing his daughter go to bed so early, George asked his wife with some concern, "Why did Gwen go to bed so early? Is she feeling unwell?" "Don't worry, Gwen is just a little tired." Seeing her husband's worried expression, Helen smiled and said, "Gwen said that Lin taught her many courses that she would learn in college in advance, so she worked very hard every day. I guess she overworked her brain. Don't worry, it will be fine after Gwen goes to school next week." Hearing his wife say this, George nodded. Back to the room and lying on the bed, Gwen picked up her mobile phone and started playing. When it was almost 7:30, Gwen put her mobile phone aside and pretended to be asleep. Sure enough, more than 10 seconds later, Helen gently opened Gwen's door. Seeing that Gwen was already asleep, she closed the door again with peace of mind. The moment the door closed, Gwen listened for a while. After making sure that her mother had left the corridor, she lifted the quilt and took out the spider suit under the bed. After putting on the spider suit, Gwen carefully opened the window and climbed out. Then she used the spider silk to swing into the distance and gradually disappeared into the night. In a box on the 3rd floor of a bar in Queens. Why are the goods getting less and less recently? The bar owner looked at the drug dealer sitting opposite the sofa, then frowned and said, "Do you know how much less money I will make if the goods are half gone?" Hearing the words of the bar owner, the leading Mexican drug dealer said, "It's not peaceful recently. Those cops are staring at us like mad dogs. Not only did we lose a large number of goods a few days ago, but we also lost several people, and even the transportation channels were wiped out by the cops. I don't care about this. Faced with the complaints of the leading Mexican drug dealer, the bar owner closed the box on the table. If you can't trade according to the required weight next month, then don't blame me for finding other partners. Are you threatening us? Hearing the words of the bar owner, the leading Mexican drug dealer frowned and asked, "You can understand it this way." Looking at the drug dealer, the bar owner snorted. If the underground emperor of New York had not suddenly suspended all drug business recently, do you think you can enter the New York market? Remember, I want enough goods next month, otherwise you can't do business in Queens. Outside the window, using spider silk to hang upside down, Gwen took a micro camera and recorded everything that happened in the box. After the transaction between the two parties was completed, Gwen put the micro camera into the storage device on her waist. Then she took out the electromagnetic pulsar prepared by Lynn for her and pressed it. Click. As the button was pressed, the next moment the originally lively bar suddenly lost power, and the box was suddenly dark. FUXX, what's going on? Are you trying to rob me? Bullshit, my reputation has always been the best. Damien, go out and see what's going on. Seeing the two groups of people in the box instantly draw their weapons to defend each other, Gwen took out a powerful flash bomb and smashed the glass and threw it in. A strong flash in the dark blinded everyone in the box, and then Gwen rushed into the box and started the battle. The sudden attack surprised the people in the box. With his eyes blind, the two groups of people began to shoot randomly with their weapons. For Gwen, who has spider sensing, the guns in the drug dealer's hands are just decorations. What's more, these people were blind and didn't know where Gwen was. The bullets shot from their guns could only attack the other party. Gwen, who has night vision, can easily see them. After kicking the drug dealer leader to the wall, he grabbed his arm and hung it outside the window. After securing it in the air with a spider silk launcher, Gwen placed his target on other drug dealers. After Lynn's training, Gwen easily broke the guy's arms. Soon, one wailing drug dealer after another was fixed on the wall outside the bar by a spider web. These are all gifts she gave to her father, and she won't be able to die. Looking at the bar owner lying on the ground and groping out, Gwen grabbed him and jumped outside. After using spider silk to fix the bar owner to the wall again, Gwen took out the unknown cell phone given by Lynn and prepared to call his father. Before the number was pressed, the door of the private room was kicked open. A group of guys holding various guns rushed in, and when they saw Gwen outside the window, they immediately prepared to shoot. Seeing this scene, Gwen subconsciously took out the electrode piece and prepared to throw it out. But before she could take action, the next second, a sniper rifle sound suddenly came from the rooftop opposite the other side. Bang, 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 bang. After several gunshots, the gang members in the box fell to the ground one after another. Seeing this scene, Gwen looked at the rooftop opposite the building. Putting away the sniper rifle, Lynn Hall stood up and gestured to Gwen, then disappeared from the spot. Seeing Lynn disappear, Gwen's mouth raised, then he took out his cell phone and dialed. At home, hearing the phone ringing, George subconsciously picked up the phone and took a look. After finding it was an unfamiliar number, he frowned and answered. Director George Stacy, please bring people to XX bar right now. The group of drug dealers and bar owners in Mexico have been subdued by me. I have photographed the evidence of the transaction between the two parties and put it in their top pockets. Quote. Listening to the electronic synthesizer on the other end of the phone, George Stacy was about to ask who the other party was. But the next second the phone hung up. What's wrong? Helen asked curiously as she looked at her husband's somewhat puzzled expression. Some people say the group of Mexican drug dealers we are investigating have been subdued and evidence of their drug trafficking has been found. As he said that, George picked up his coat and stood up and said, although I don't know if it's a prank, I have to take someone to see it. If it's true, then you can completely close the net this time. As he said that, George Stacy leaned down and kissed Helen in the face. You have to rest first, I may not be back in the middle of the night. After saying that, George Stacy turned around and left the house. The other side, Gwen, who had just finished his first battle, was very excited at this moment. After coming to the place that he had agreed with Lynn, Gwen pounced on Lynn and kissed him several times. Looking at Gwen who was excited, Lynn gently patted her back to calm her down. After she was completely calm, Lin Nang smiled and said, "It's a good job." "That's right, I've been simulating this battle in my mind. I originally planned to wait for them to fall alone and catch them one by one and throw them to the police station door. But thinking about my father trying to catch them all in one go, I thought about taking the evidence of their transactions. By the way, Lynn, I'm doing well tonight. Looking at Gwen, who was begging for praise, Lynn smiled and said with a confirmation, "It's really good." Although there were some minor flaws in the process, the overall performance was pretty good. As he said that, Lynn pulled Gwen to review. Through Lynn's review, Gwen discovered that there were still many shortcomings in his plan. For example, after using flash bullets to blind them, you can use electrode sheets to make them lose their combat effectiveness. You can also use props to turn them into frightened birds and kill each other. After reviewing the incident one by one, I listened to the sound of a sirens coming from afar. Lynn then smiled and said, "Okay, when the matter is over, go back quickly, so as not to worry if Aunt Helen finds out." Gwen nodded when he heard Lynn say this. He stood on tiptoe and kissed Lynn on his mouth, then flew towards the house with spider silk. Outside the bar, oh my god, he looked up at the drug dealer who was being fixed to the wall by spider silk, and was wailing in pain at this moment. A police officer said subconsciously, "What is the spider monster attacking them? How do you feel like these drug dealers are like food tied to spider webs? Stop talking nonsense, get these drug dealers down first, and carefully check their pockets, which may contain evidence of the transaction that has been photographed." Hearing the chief's words, the police officers immediately began to act. One of the sheriffs asked curiously, "Chief, how do you know there is evidence in their pockets?" Faced with the sheriff's curiosity, George Stacy did not answer. But he recalled the strange number in his mind. Half an hour later, in the apartment where Lynn originally lived. Lynn, who had just finished taking a shower, sat on the sofa. At this moment, the TV was still playing a variety show with mystery as the gimmick. The host of the variety show was holding a microphone and talking to the camera about the legend of the abandoned mental hospital in front of him. Barbara, a loyal viewer of this show, was kneeling in front of Lynn and trying hard to speak. A few minutes later, he picked up Barbara with her mouth moving and walked into the bedroom. At this moment, the TV in the living room was still constantly emitting terrifying background music. When the host brought a camera and a group of young people into the abandoned mental hospital, a scream of pain was also heard in the bedroom. Barbara Kent's favorability is 7, you gain 50 experience points. Closing square bracket. Hearing the system prompt sound, Lynn Hall was stunned. Looking at Barbara, who was tearful but still holding onto his neck, Lynn Hall suddenly felt as if he had opened the door to a new world. It turns out that favorability can be gained this way. Moreover, when Sean Alice and the others' favorability reached 7, they only gave him 5 experience points. Unexpectedly, Barbara directly gave him 50 experience points. This is normal, after all, Barbara is a mutant, and Sean Alice and the others are just ordinary people. But now is obviously not the time to think about these things. Looking at Barbara, whose pain is gradually disappearing, Lynn started to act again. In the early morning, sunlight shone through the blinds into the bedroom. Pulling his arm out from under Barbara's head, he looked at Barbara, who was still sleeping. Lynn Hall got up and went to the living room. After taking a glass of water from the coffee table, Lynn turned on the system directly. Name, Lynn Hall. Intelligence, 3. Strength, 4. Speed, 2. Endurance, 3. Energy emission, 0. Combat skills, 6. Skills, Israeli Krav Maga LV10 Max Hot Weapon Mastery LV9 2574 11,000 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu LV7 755 2100 Muay Thai LV7 125 2100 Cold Weapon Mastery LV6 742,600 Super Strength LV1 01500 Teleport LV1 02000 Experience 1580. Since Gwen became Spider-Woman, 9 points of favorability can provide her with 500 points of experience every week. Before, the favorability was also 9, but it only provided 50 points of experience per week, a full 10-fold difference. Tisk. It seems that it is more cost-effective to brush the favorability of superheroes or supervillains, although it is more difficult. The second is the favorability of the ability users, such as mutants like Barbara, or some superpowers. After Gwen became Spider-Woman, although the first gift was experience instead of ability, Lynn was not in a hurry. 9 points of favorability are given once a week, and sooner or later, you can get the ability. Looking at the skill bar, Lynn thought for a moment, and then directly upgraded the super strength skill. With the super strength upgraded to LV2, Lynn instantly felt that his strength had increased by nearly double. Seeing that the super strength in the skill bar became LV2, 0.003, Lynn directly turned off the system. Coming to the bathroom to wash up, Lynn suddenly thought of last night. If Gwen and I did this, would the favorability be directly increased to 10 points? Thinking of this, Lynn shook his head. After all, Gwen still lived at home. Let's wait until she turns 18 next year to go to college and doesn't have to go home to live with me. New York Police Department. Director, the mobile phone number you asked us to investigate is anonymous, and we cannot track the holder through this number. Standing in front of George Stacy, the person from the technical department reported, and the use of this number is very clean, there is no second contact except you. Hearing the report from the technical department, George Stacy nodded. Did the surveillance cameras in the neighborhood near the bar capture the specific situation? Yes. As he said, the person from the technical department handed the tablet to George Stacy. He took the tablet and took a look. It was the whole process of Gwen's action captured on the street across the bar. Director, this spider woman should have companions. Pointing to the second half of the video, the scene where the group of people in the bar box were shot by Lynn with a sniper rifle. The person from the technical department said, after our analysis, after Spider Woman captured the bar owner, a group of gang members rushed in to shoot her, and Spider Woman's companions used a sniper rifle to shoot them remotely. We compared the direction of the bullets and found that the sniper position should be the rooftop opposite the bar. Unfortunately, when we sent people to check, we found that the rooftop was very clean, and there was not even a trace left. In addition, not only the surrounding surveillance, but also the process of Spider Woman attacking the bar last night was filmed by many passers-by and posted on the internet. Now there are a lot of discussions about this matter on the internet. Hearing the report from the technician, George Stacy nodded gently. After motioning him to go out first, George Stacy thought for a few seconds, then took out his mobile phone and dialed the number from last night. After the phone rang a few times, George Stacy heard the electronic synthesized voice saying, Chief George Stacy, you should be satisfied with the gift last night. Who are you? Spider Woman, a good neighbor of New York citizens. Listening to the electronic synthesized voice, George Stacy said solemnly, Spider Woman, first of all, on behalf of the New York Police Department, I would like to thank you and your companions for everything you did last night. But at the same time, I hope you can understand that the city of New York has perfect laws, and the New York Police Department and the National Guard are capable of protecting the safety of ordinary people. So, this city does not need the help of volunteer police. I am very grateful for everything you and your companions have done, but I hope you can abide by the laws of New York and don't disrupt the order of this city. After that, George Stacy hung up the phone directly. Chief, many media outside the police station want to interview you, all wanting to ask about Spider Woman last night. Hearing the words of his subordinates, George Stacy nodded, I know. In Gwen's room, looking at the hung-up phone, Gwen sighed softly. She didn't expect her father to be so opposed to her other identity. Obviously, she was helping him. Although she received her father's thanks, it was obvious that he didn't want her other identity to continue to play the role of a vigilante in New York. Thinking of this, Gwen took out her mobile phone and sent a message to Lynn. Inside the FBI building, Barbara was holding a tablet, still watching the replay of the mysterious gimmick variety show. Lynn looked at the message sent by Gwen and comforted her a few words. Turning on the computer, she looked at Uncle George, who was being interviewed by the media with a tough attitude. Lynn was not surprised at all. He knew very well Uncle George's attitude towards voluntary police. Whether it was Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, in Uncle George's eyes, they were both disruptive to the order of New York. I just don't know how Uncle George would react when he knew that Gwen was Spider-Woman. Thinking of this, Lynn turned off the video. At the same time, at Peter Parker's home in Queens, Peter Parker almost spit out a mouthful of water while watching the interview on TV. Uncle George's attitude towards Spider-Woman and her companions on TV is not the point. The point is, there is suddenly a Spider-Woman in New York. Oh my God, could it be that in that science exhibition, in addition to biting herself, the spider also bit another girl? Watching the media constantly broadcasting Spider-Woman's gorgeous spider suit and the various high-tech weapons in the waist device. More importantly, She has a very powerful companion. Seeing this, Peter Parker subconsciously took a look at the bloated spider suit that he had hidden. Why do I feel that compared with her, I am more like a fake substitute? Shaking his head, he threw this weird idea out of his mind. At the same time, a little excitement rose in his heart. I have the same kind. After media reports and the fermentation of videos on the internet, videos about Spider-Woman became completely popular in just 1 week. After Spider-Woman became popular, videos about her continued to appear online. Some are Spider-Women swaying spider silk between buildings in New York, while others are Spider-Women supporting the old man across the road. The most popular one is undoubtedly the video of Spider-Woman using spider silk to fix several car thieves on the wall on the street, and she solved 2 gangs of gang members who pulled their guns and shot each other because of their territory and saved many innocent passers-by. Through videos, many people know that a messenger of justice appeared in New York City. But a few days later, another Spider-Man appeared. Compared to Spider-Woman's method of treating criminals as more cruel, Spider-Man prefers to tie up bad people while placing them. It seems that Spider-Man is more friendly to the people, but the public opinion on the internet supports Spider-Woman more. After all, she saved many people from the gang members. Brooklyn streets. Looking at the gangster who had either broken his arms or his legs broken. Spider-Man, who came with spider silk, looked at Spider-Woman and said, "Hi, Spider-Woman, I'm Spider-Woman for the first time. Actually, I'm not your fan. I'm not going to imitate you, but okay, you really debuted a few days earlier than me, but I actually became Spider-Man long ago. By the way, my spider suit inspiration has long been there, and yours is not. What the hell do you want to say?" Looking at the talkative guy in front of him, Gwen frowned and said, "If you have nothing to do, then go and help more people in need." Cool, I didn't expect that your thoughts were the same as me. Speaking of this, Peter Parker shot a spider silk and fixed a gang member who wanted to pick up the gun to the ground. Then he looked at Gwen and said, "Spider-Girl, although our ideas are the same, I think you seem to be a bit heavy. Sorry, I have no other intentions." Looking at Spider-Man, who is organizing language while also acting very talkative. Gwen glanced at the police lane that was driving from afar. "The police are here. If you are idle, then leave them to the police." After saying that, Gwen left the place with spider silk. Watching Spider-Woman leave, Peter Parker scratched his head. However, after taking a look at the police car, he fired spider silk and chased the Spider-Woman. More than 10 minutes later, the roof of a building. "What the hell do you want to do with me? Don't get me wrong, I have no malice." Raising his hands, signaling that he had no malice, Peter Parker looked at Gwen and said, "I'm just a little curious, are you a member of a certain organization? I've seen a video of you catching a drug dealer. There is obviously a very powerful sniper in that video to help you, and you have a lot of high-tech products. So I think you must be a very powerful organization behind you, it's so cool." Hearing Peter Parker say this, Gwen asked curiously, "So, is this what you are looking for me? Do you want to join us too?" I think since our ideas are consistent, they are all for helping these ordinary people, so I want to know your organization. For example, do you have any requirements for joining you? If you need to know my true identity, then forget it. I don't want to implicate my family because of this." Listening to Peter Parker's tone, Gwen thought for a few seconds, then said, "I have to ask. Also don't follow me. If he wants you to join, then he will find you." After saying that, Gwen jumped down from the building, then swept through the buildings with spider silks and gradually disappeared. Watching Spider-Woman leave, Peter Parker shrugged. In fact, the so-called joining the organization behind Gwen is just his simple test. Since becoming Spider-Man, Peter Parker feels that being a good neighbor to New York citizens is good. But it would be even better if you had a companion. The appearance of Spider-Woman gives Peter Parker a feeling of finding his kind. In addition, they are all punishing bad guys and helping ordinary people in need, so Peter Parker is very curious about Spider-Girl and the organization behind her. If you don't need to show your true identity, you can join an organization with the same philosophy and you can get a salary. Then Peter Parker is definitely willing to join. After all, Aunt May and Uncle Ben are still worried about the cost of going to college next year. Although you can apply for a loan, Peter Parker feels that if you become Spider-Man, you will still get a salary, which is definitely the luckiest thing. Oh no, I actually forgot about the date. Peter Parker immediately patted his head when he thought of his date with Mary Jane. He rushed towards the Queens with spider silk, hoping that he would not be late for this date. The other side, sitting on the edge of the building, Gwen took out his cell phone and sent a text message to Lynn. Through spider sensing Gwen, you can confirm that this talkative Spider-Man is very capable. If you can become a helper, it should be a good choice. Seeing Lynn reply to something he knew, Gwen put away his phone. Well, he must be busy now. In a luxurious hotel in Washington. Lynn Hall is very busy in a messy room. After all, today is the engagement party of senior Jessica. As a junior, I must help her. Lying on the carpet, Jessica's forehead was covered with sweat. There was an exquisite photo frame between her elbows, and in the frame was her sweet engagement photo with her fiancé. Seeing the sweat dripping on the engagement photo, Jessica raised her hand with the engagement ring and wiped it. Turning her head to look at the hardworking Lynn, Jessica said softly, Junior, you seem a little excited today. Slapping Jessica's hips, Lynn Hall looked at the happy senior in the huge engagement photo on the wall with a serious look and said, Don't disturb me while I'm working. I was wrong. Turning her head again and looking at the engagement photo between her elbows, Jessica felt that her soul seemed to tremble when she saw her fiancé's doting and adoring eyes. Jessica then whispered, Be careful recently, someone wants to deal with you. Lighting a cigarette, Lynn Hall slowly exhaled light blue smoke and said, Is there anyone who wants to deal with me? Yes. Getting up and taking out a document from the drawer and handing it to Lynn, Jessica said, The other 3 assistant agent supervisors, I heard that you have dealt with Miller Field. How do you know? Hearing what the senior said, Lynn took the document and asked. Didn't Miller Field secretly report some unfavorable evidence to the Ministry of Internal Affairs some time ago? As a result, he took the initiative to find the Ministry of Internal Affairs a few days ago and said that the information he reported was wrong, and it was a misunderstanding and a lot of nonsense. If I don't know that you have dealt with him, then I am the head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs for nothing. Raised his head and wanted to kiss Lynn, but was rejected by Lynn. After patting him in annoyance, Jessica continued, After he turned against us, I asked the people in the Ministry of Internal Affairs to keep an eye on him, and found that he had been keeping an eye on the other 2 assistant secret agents recently. He should be paving the way for you. Alan Maxey is easy to deal with, although there are several congressmen in his family. But Kenny Davis is very tricky. After all, his uncle is from the Ministry of Justice. I heard that he is ready to deal with you. Getting up from the bed, Lynn Hall asked while putting on his clothes, How did you know such a secret news? Don't forget who my fiancé's father is. He is one of the 9 justices. He has a good relationship with the one in the Ministry of Justice. My fiancé heard a sentence when he followed his father to the dinner. Getting up to help Lynn Hall put on his clothes, Jessica laughing, My fiancé doesn't know what our relationship is like. He thought we don't get along. But seriously, you have to be serious, Lynn. The FBI seems to have great power, but politics is always dirty. Rejecting Jessica's kiss again, Lynn said, Woman, you are too greedy. You fool. Giving Lynn, who was very tough when she pulled up her pants, a blank look, Jessica said, I got this information from my father. It's all Kenny Davis and people who have a gap with his family. So, Junior, how are you going to deal with him? Putting on his coat, Lynn walked out and said, Just like feeding you baby burp pills in advance, I like to eliminate unstable factors before they break out. After that, Lynn left the room directly. Before the engagement ceremony dinner, James Duke took Lynn to a fraternity party sponsored by Hydra. It can be said that the members attending this fraternity are not only dignitaries and celebrities, but also elites in all fields of food, clothing and housing. Listening to their conversation, a random decision can affect the jobs of thousands of people. Lynn N has seen what real power is. I thought Duke was going to show his fangs through this party and force me to join Hydra. Lynn N has thought about how to express his shock. But Duke didn't show his attitude until the end of the party. He just patted Lynn N on the shoulder before leaving and asked him to pay attention to the stocks of a newly established group with a smile. Obviously, Hydra is going to give me money to corrupt me again. After the fraternity party, the engagement dinner officially began. Sitting next to James Duke, Lynn N looked at Jessica in an evening gown and holding her fiancé's arm. But in his mind, he imagined the scene of her wearing a wedding dress. Tisk, Today, she was unwilling to wear a wedding dress, and insisted that she would invite herself when she got married. Lynn, I've always been curious. You and Jessica graduated from the same university, so why is your relationship so strained? Looking at Lynn, James Duke asked with a smile. Director, you know me. I always like to be kind to others. Faced with Duke's inquiry, Lynn Hall smiled and said, it's just that when I was in college, I had a lot of friction with Jessica's boyfriend. I was still young at the time, so I used some methods to get Jessica's boyfriend expelled from school. I only found out later that the guy was Jessica's first love. The truth of the matter is not important. At least James Duke was still smiling after hearing Lynn's answer. No wonder Jessica always dislikes you and makes trouble for you everywhere, but Lynn, it's not good for your relationship with the Ministry of Internal Affairs to be too strained. Besides, her father is the deputy director of the FBI. At this point, James Duke looked at Lynn and said, let me find an opportunity to help you mediate, which will also help your future promotion. Thank you, Director. Looking at Duke's support, look, Lynn Hall thanked him very sincerely. While talking with Duke, Lynn Hall's mobile phone suddenly vibrated. Picked up the phone and took a look, and found that it was Tony Stark calling. Getting up and walking to the side to answer the phone, he heard Tony Stark's voice hurriedly. Lynn, I need your help here, FUXX, Pepper was kidnapped by the fool Obadiah Stan. He also threatened to take away the arc reactor. I hope you can help me rescue Pepper. Please. Listening to Tony's anxious tone, Lynn nodded, no problem. After hanging up the phone, Lynn returned to Duke and said something, then left with Barbara and Laura Lorna. After leaving the dinner, Lynn asked Barbara to use her ability to send them to Stark Industries. As the portal opened, the four people came directly to the bottom of Stark Industries. At this moment, Tony Stark had not arrived yet, and Obadiah Stane was wearing the Iron Man armor and showing off his power. Seeing this scene, Lynn turned his head and said to Polaris, Lorna, can you control him? Faced with Lynn's question, Polaris nodded gently. After taking a step forward, Lorna stretched out her hand, and the green energy was released from her palm. The next second, the Iron Man flying in the air was instantly dragged to the ground by an invisible force. Controlled by the power of the North Star, Obadiah Stane tried to control the armor, but the armor remained motionless on the ground. Walking forward and asking Lorna to open the visor of Ironmonger, Lynn Hall looked at Obadiah Stane and asked, where is Pepper? Looking at Lynn, who suddenly appeared, Obadiah Stane, who was struggling constantly, was full of anger in his eyes. What did you do to me? Pepper was kidnapped by Obadiah Stane. If you want to find out where she is being held as quickly as possible, then the best way is undoubtedly to interrogate Obadiah Stane, the mastermind. Standing on the Iron Man armor with one foot, facing Obadiah Stane's eyes that wanted to eat him alive, Lynn stopped talking nonsense and said to Laura beside him, Laura, is there a way to make him tell you where Pepper is being held? No problem, I'll make him a beautiful dream. Nodding slightly to Lynn, Laura waved her fingertips quickly, and then Obadiah Stane's struggle gradually stopped. The eyes that were originally full of anger and hatred towards Lynn gradually became soft, and the whole person was immersed in a wonderful illusion. In the constructed illusion, Obadiah Stane killed Tony Stark at this time and drove away all the old guys in the board of directors. Finally, he successfully occupied the entire Stark Industries. Lynn, he has sunk into a beautiful dream. Ask him where Pepper is being held. Hearing Lynn's words, Laura nodded, then squatted in front of Obadiah Stane and asked softly, Chairman, where is Ms. Pepper being held, and how to deal with her? Faced with Laura's inquiry, Obadiah Stane's excited expression gradually showed a trace of struggle. But soon it returned to normal again. At this moment, it was the evening rush hour, but the surrounding traffic was blocked by the Ironmonger in the middle of the road. Looking at what happened in the middle of the road, many people subconsciously picked up their mobile phones to take pictures. When Tony Stark flew over in his armor, the curious people around him exclaimed directly. Ignoring the passers-by who were taking pictures, Tony Stark anxiously came to Lynn and said, Lynn, Pepper. Making a shushing gesture to Tony, Lynn looked at Laura on the side. Seeing Lynn's actions, Tony Stark was full of anxiety, but he still calmed down. A few seconds later, listening to Obadiah Stane saying an address, Lynn Hall looked at Tony Stark and said, Pepper is locked up here, do you want to go or do I? Faced with Lynn's question, Tony Stark was just about to control the armor to take off. But soon he said to Lynn, "You are professional in saving people, Lynn, I'll leave Pepper to you. I will get rid of Obadiah Stane." Looking at Tony Stark, who obviously wanted to go to the rescue himself, but suddenly changed his mind when the armor took off. Lynn nodded and said, "Okay." After that, Lynn asked Barbara to open the portal directly. A few minutes later, at Jessica's engagement dinner in Washington. Director, something happened in New York. The staff came to James Duke and handed his mobile phone to Duke, saying, "Tony Stark, wearing a mechanical prosthesis, fought with Obadiah Stane." Oh, after taking the phone from the staff, Duke took a look, smiled and said something to the people around him, then got up and left the dinner. Back in the car, Duke looked at the two armors that were fighting, then took out his mobile phone and called Alexander Pierce. After the call was connected, Duke said with a smile, "Pierce, did you see the battle happening in New York?" The other end of the phone. Looking at the computer, the media on the helicopter at this moment recorded the whole battle. Alexander Pierce smiled and said, "I'm watching. This battle is really exciting. However, the armor Tony Stark is wearing is not a mechanical prosthesis as he said. It's more like a threatening individual weapon. If we can get this armor, then, hee." Hearing what Pierce said, Duke nodded and said, "I have to admit that Tony Stark is a true genius like his father Howard. It seems that we have to pay more attention to him. What about Lynn Hall? Isn't he very close to Tony Stark?" "Duke, maybe we can." "I don't think so." Before Pierce finished speaking, Duke interrupted directly, "Pierce, let's not talk about whether Lynn can get the armor. Compared with Tony Stark's armor, I think it is more important to have someone who can control the New York FBI for us in the future." Quote, "Besides, even if there is no Tony Stark's armor, it will not affect the implementation of your plan. But if your plan fails, we must ensure that the power is always in our hands." Hearing Duke say this, Alexander Pierce frowned. "You still don't think highly of Dr. Zola's proposal?" "Hee, just a fool defeated by Captain America. I admit that he is an excellent scientist, but..." "Okay Duke, let Stern hold a hearing. As for Lynn Hall, you have to speed up the progress." Quote, "Don't worry, the delicacy is ready. After seeing the power and profit, he will make a choice." After speaking, Duke hung up the phone. Putting the phone in his pocket, James Duke continued to watch the battle between Iron Man and Ironmonger. In an abandoned industrial park in Staten Island. Bang, bang, bang. After a series of gunfire, the group of kidnappers who kidnapped Pepper were easily wiped out by Lynn. The North Star, who was originally following Lin En, was ready to take action, could not help but feel a little envious when he looked at Lin En's neat skills. Looking at Lin untying Pepper tied up on his chair, Polaris whispered to Laura, "Laura, if I had such skills, then I was in the orphanage in the first place. Then let Lin teach you." Looking at the North Star, Laura smiled and said, "We are our own people now, and he shouldn't refuse." Hearing Laura say this, Polaris thought for a while and then nodded. Taking off the fabric stuffed in Pepper's mouth, Lynn Hall used a dagger to cut off the rope on Pepper's body. "Pepper, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Lynn, please go and save Tony quickly. Obadiah Stane uses me to coerce Tony, he is ready." After seeing that he broke free from the constraints, he immediately asked himself to save Tony. Lynn smiled and comforted, "Don't worry, Tony will have nothing to do for the time being, he asked me to come and save you." When Pepper heard Lynn say this, he was relieved. "It's fine that he's fine, my God, I didn't expect Obadiah Stane to do this. Is he crazy? Tony clearly regarded him as a relative and even told me that he decided to give him another chance." After hearing Pepper's words, Lynn was about to take her back. Tony Stark was taken away by Obadiah Stane, and the arc reactor in his armor was replaced at this moment. So, Lynn is ready to take this opportunity to grab his personal head. After all, it's a pity to miss the favorability of -7. Please like my videos and subscribe for more videos.